welcome once again to the Dolomites, the Northern Dolomites in particular, and the 7th stage of this year's Visma Ski Classics, the Dobbiaco Cortina race. A new race, it was always going to be that way this year. Of course, we had the event in Seefeld last week, but that was very, very much a last-minute replacement for the König Ludwiglauf. But we were always looking forward to coming here. This is a new part, really, of the calendar for 2015-2016, and you never tire of these shots which we're bringing you, first of all. I know our production crew, our director, when you think about this race, you think about the Marcialonga, you always want to start with the Dolomites, the mountain range, because it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and these images are simply stunning, breathtaking. If you have interest in winter sport, or you don't at all, I think you can still appreciate the natural beauty that surrounds this part of the world in northern Italy. We're about an hour and a half away, actually, hour and a half the other side, in one of the other valleys here. When you think of the Marcialonga, which of course takes place primarily in the Val di Fiemme and the Val di Fassa as well, we're kind of over the other side in another part of the Dolomites here for this race, which is taking place pretty much exclusively in Dobbiaco, or Toblach in German, because this is very much German, Italian part of the world. A lot of history which we'll take you through, of course, over the next couple of hours to do with that as well. It's disappointing, first of all, that we won't go down to Cortina d'Ampezzo, because winter sports fans, those of you, we were looking forward to going down there, because that is a massively important place of historical significance, former Winter Olympics venue, a big part, of course, of alpine skiing folklore as well. But we can't go down there because of this warm winter, which is doing its best to create problems for us. But we're doing our best, and the organisers have done a fantastic job here of putting together a course. It's going to be 32 kilometres or so around this little community, really, here. Dobbiaco in Italian, Toblach in German, in the southern Tyrol here in northern Italy, and there's plenty of snow around, and it's allowed us the organisers in particular, to put together this wonderful 32 kilometres or so. A little bit of disagreement about the exact length, but that is more or less what it is, and that's where we finish, where we are, the Nordic Arena, which those of you who do follow your winter sports will probably be familiar with as big site in the Tour de Ski competition every year, of course. But this is where we are at the moment. It is Guy McCree alongside the 24-hour skiing, long-distance skiing world record holder, Teemu Virtanen, once again. Great to work with you as always, Teemu. Yeah, it's great to be here, isn't it? It's always lovely to come back to the Dolomites, because you just get inspired. I don't know about you, you get inspired when you come back here and look around the surroundings.
Oh, of course, this is a great place, and as you said, this is the place that's hosting, the World Cups, and also, of course, the Tour de Ski, one of the great places, and of course, today is a bit of a shorter race, as you mentioned, 32K, and it's unfortunately not the one that it's supposed to be, the 50K, ending in Cortina, which is a beautiful place and a famous place, but it'll be, nonetheless, it'll be an interesting race. It's a bit shorter one for the skiers. Last weekend's Seefeld one was one of the toughest ones, so I'm pretty sure most of the skiers, welcome this shorter one, and start getting ready for Vasaloppet, which is in 3 weeks from now. Even some of the skiers are not even here because of Vasaloppet, so, but we'll have an interesting race, of course.
Yeah, it was snowing a little bit overnight. We kind of drove through the valley, through the Dolomites, through the range and everything. You see the temperature's actually a little bit more traditional, around -4 at the moment. It'll get a little bit warmer, of course, through the course of the morning. It always does. But good conditions as well. It promises actually some different challenges for the skiers here overall, with that snow falling overnight, and the fact it's pretty cold. It's been cold this morning as well here.
Yes, of course, but we have to remember this is pretty much a kind of a standard winter, winter conditions and snow. For this year, unfortunately, we haven't had anything like this that much. New snow, pretty perfect conditions. It's not going to be that fast. It'll be fast enough, and it's going to be a fast race, but it's not as fast possibly than in Marcialonga, for example, where we had the artificial snow. And here's the course.
Yeah, we take a look at the profile. You touched on it already. A modified course, Teemu. They're starting out. You say Prags there. That's the German pronunciation. We would also say it's Bries as well, which is where they begin, kind of to the west of us, if you like, of where we are at the finish in Toblach in the Nordic Arena. And you can see that they actually make a pass through here before they loop around. A bit more on this in a moment when we take you round the course, but you see the altitude there as well. That is a factor in Central Europe that the skiers have to deal with. Let's take a look at it a little bit more now, Tammy. Talk us through this one, this modified course, not involving Cortina, of course, but still some challenges in there for the skiers.
Yeah, unfortunately, I hadn't had a chance to ski that, which I always want to do before the race, but I arrived last night, so I didn't have a chance to do that. But based on the info that I got from the skiers, it's relatively easy course. There are a couple tough climbs, some downhills as well, and I think the first one is kind of tricky. It's a little bit of a curvy, so you have to be really careful there. And then we have a bit of a climb, you know, and then 25K, that's the highest points, and then after that it's just a, you know, decline. It's descending to the finish area. So it's an interesting course, not as tough, you know, as the one in Sheffield last weekend, but and not that long, of course, but it will be an interesting one.
Yeah, that high point you're talking about 1,318 meters above sea level is the highest they get to down by the cemetery. More on that to come, because it fluctuates really between 1,100 meters above sea level and about 1,250. We see some of the favourites warming up, of course, all the last-minute preparations, making sure they've got good equipment. Service teams would have been up, putting in their crazy hours, testing skis and everything, wax and everything else besides, to see what will work in these particular conditions. As we say, they are starting, the starting point, as I say, is away to the west of us in Prags or Priest, depending on how you look at it, province of Bolzano in Valpusteria, southern Tyrol. And as I say, some of these bigger names just beginning their warm-ups. In terms of our schedule, where we're at the moment, we've just gone 20 past the hour, 20 past 9 in the morning here in Toblak Dobbiaco. We're about just under 10 minutes away, 9 minutes away or so from the start of the women's race. They once again, the elite women, get a head start over the men. This is a big thing that Visma Ski Classics has done, being at the forefront of really getting away from the mass start situation. Only the Vasaloppet now, which is the next stage coming up, of course, in 3 weeks' time or so, is now the only race actually that has has a mass start between the men and the women. But Sarina Bonner, who was winner brilliantly last time out, in Seefeld, really enjoyed the course profile, their ability to show her ability in the uphills with the wax. Absolutely destroyed the rest of the elite women, frankly, there in Austria. She's amongst the elite field here. But it's, yeah, it's interesting. They've got the 30-minute head start here. That's what I was about to say, because the men don't get underway until 10 o'clock local time here. So you would think with the shorter course, the women are going to probably not be caught, we think, overall. 30 kilometers or so, they're probably going to be able to finish their race and never be caught by the men throughout.
Oh, of course, for this one, this is so short. It's only going to take them about an hour and a half or so for women, and men maybe, depends on the conditions, about 20 minutes or so, maybe an hour and 15 minutes, because it's a kind of, you know, fast course. And about Serena, the one we saw there on the screen, I don't think this will be her course. You know, the last weekend, of course, that was hers. But and here we have the champions.
Yeah, no, she's third now because she had a brilliant weekend in Austria. Behind her, though, still a fair way behind Britta Johansson, Norgren and Katarina Smutner. See, in the sprint competition, Andres Niergaard has almost got that wrapped up. I think, actually, mathematically, he can clinch it here at this race this weekend if things go his way. He's won 8 of the 10 sprint competitions so far. And in the champion bid, we saw Petter Eliasson winner last time around and winning that sprint finish and dominating again that yellow bib competition. Some of the others, good battles actually going on here, Teemu. Particularly, we see Santander dominating the team competition and Emilia Lindstedt not with any competition in the youth women's bib. But the men's bib here, the least planned go guys, Stian Høllegaard and Anders Host, good battle going on there.
That's a tough one, and it's good to have these two young, you know, skiers there, and both of them have performed really well this season. And of course, Stian was on the podium in Marcialonga, and pretty much up there in the Seefeld one as well, with Maximilian Others. Smutna.
Yes, the defending champion of the yellow bib, of course, in good spirits. The woman from Team Santander had some problems, didn't she, last time out? Good finish result overall from her in Seefeld, but issues during that race.
Yeah, she got penalized, you know, for actually having someone to help her, you know, to clean the skis, because she had a kick wax, like, you know, all of the women except, you know, Britta, you know, had, you know, pretty much kick wax on, and she got, you know, penalized, you know, so. But that happens, you know. They've been pretty strict about that, you know, this season in Visma Ski Classics and the World Cup. You know, the skating, just to make sure that skiers, whenever they do double poling, they don't use any skating steps, you know, which is of course pivotal, you know, for this, you know, if you want to keep them separate.
Yeah, we also saw there Klara Morochova as well from the Silvia Madsis team, the Czech outfit, who are well represented here. That's a big part of things in Visma Ski Classics. It's not, as you might think, sometimes not all just about 3 or 4 pro teams here. We've also got representation. I just looked down this women's field, actually, some of the, if you like, smaller teams, but important part of things. Team Sinfiel and as well Pioneer Investments, Kraft and Futura, one of the home teams involved, of course. We have them in Excalibur Little Sport as well, the 2 Italian teams involved. We're sure to get plenty of support here, even where we are in, I suppose nominally you could say more German-speaking part of the world, but still very, very much German-Italian. They like to point out here, even here in Toblach, Dobbiaco. It's going to be interesting here to see how Bono goes, as you say, because that course was much to her liking. This one, probably
not that much.
You would say it's going to be difficult for her to reproduce back up the win again. It might be a bit more tricky for her here with this these particular conditions.
But sometimes, you know, when you win, you get kind of an extra boost, you know, and your confidence. So she's going to do, you know, she's going to be much better than in the early races, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. No, we see the lineup here for the women. We talk about the quality in the women's field. You see from United Bakeries, Astrid Slind there, who was second last time around. Brilliant race in Seefeld from her for United Bakeries. And some of the others as well, good Olympics experience as well. It's good to see Annika Löfström as well. She had a good result, 6th last time around, because she's had difficulties with her health, her shape over the last 18 months or so. So it's just good to see some different names in the women's race, just showing the quality that we've now got in that field.
And also you mentioned the teams earlier, and we have to remember that, you know, sometimes, you know, when you look at this, you know, we tend to talk about the 4 teams that are in the top, but we have 27, 28 teams here, and also 11 teams from Sweden, 5 from Norway, and then all the other countries in Europe, pretty much, you know, Austria, Finland, Czech Republic, you know, represented. So we have teams from different countries, and it's growing all the time.
Indeed, there's the leader of them all at the moment, Britta Johansson Norgren. Tougher time last time around. That course in Seefeld didn't really suit her double poling style, but expect her to be back with things at the head of things here, really here for this race, this course. Sure to be, I mean, she's the best double poler out there, so sure to be at the head of things again as we see some of the other elite women here getting ready to go. We're about, about 3 minutes or so, just under 3 minutes away from the start of this women's race here, as they look to begin in Prague's or Bries, depending on whether you like to use the German or the Italian version. But it is to the west of us, and they'll be around there really for the first few kilometres before they move to Niederdorf at 9-10 kilometres into this race, which is officially set out at 32 kilometres. That's what the women will do. They do have this 30-minute head start over the men, so we're going to get a big opportunity here to really focus on the women's race, on these first few kilometres of it, before we of course look at the men as well when they get underway at the top of the hour. But it will be Bono looking to back up that win in Seefeld. The return to winning ways really for her. 3-time former yellow bib winner, but still quite a way behind both Smutner and Norgren. Norgren, of course, will be leading them off for the Lager 157 ski team wearing yellow. As we always say, these nervous few moments before the gun. We don't have a cannon here like we had last weekend in Seefeld. I know our CEO, David Nielsen of Visma Ski Classics, were keen to get a picture with the cannon.
Yeah, that was a nice one, actually.
Yeah, I couldn't blame him, actually. I wasn't there, of course. You were there, Teemu, but I couldn't blame him for wanting to get a picture, because it's not every week you get a cannon starting the race. We have to put up with the normal gun. This time, the starter's gun traditionally, as we have in these races. Just a few seconds remain now before they begin, and they look to make their way towards where we are, where our commentary position is in the Nordic Arena in Toblach. They have 32 kilometres to negotiate before they're here with us. They await the gun then in Bries. Study in concentration, these elite women with their head start almost half past the hour here, 9:30 in the morning, Central European time here in the Northern Dolomites, in the Southern Tyrol.
It's actually kind of an interesting moment, you know, for a skier. You just stand there and it becomes kind of calm. You're just ready. All the nervousness kind of fades away. And you're just there. But before that, you might be a little bit nervous.
You sound so relaxed. It's so easy to be, isn't it, from this commentary position? And they are underway as the clock ticks half past the hour. The elite women get set and go then from Briese Ferrara, as it is Prague's Schmieden. Here in this commune of province of Bolzano in Val Pusteria, and you already get a look at the Dolomites at the UNESCO World Heritage Site. This whole course is in this wonderful part of the world, and Britta Johansson Nordgren leading them off. The woman in yellow, and already the massive difference really from that race in Seefeld last weekend. When you look around, you look for anyone using wax or whatever, and you're not really going to get the same choices being made here, Teemu.
No, this one, as I said, is much easier. And I was actually surprised, you know, that, you know, Britta, you know, stood by her word, you know, and she did double poling, because she told me in the early, you know, part of the season that she will do all the races double poling. But she didn't know that Seefeld will be in the, you know, in the circuit, you know. But she did it, you know, and she showed that, you know, she's capable of doing something like that. So she's really strong. But of course, you know, for her it was a little bit too long, you know, for double poling, 66k, you know, 65, 66k, you know, and the conditions were not really perfect for double poling as well. It got a bit warmer towards the end in Seefeld. Men did it, of course, but, you know, we're kind of used to seeing them, you know, that's pretty much what they do. Not all of them, though. There were some guys using gig wax, Lucas Bauer and Modena Pedersen, getting mixed up with the names, and a couple other ones too.
Yeah, early stages, of course, as they make their way up here. Nordgren leading them off, but a lot of other names in that women's field. No, I mean, we looked at her, their numbers and everything. Her numbers incredibly consistent. That's why she's wearing yellow. If you want to see how she's done, of course, vismaskiclassics.com, the place to go. We look at Sarina Bonner's season so far. Of course, the Kaiser Maximilian Lauf, the high point last weekend. Very consistent in the earlier races without getting that victory. I mean, she was regularly on the podium, as you could see. But really, last weekend, that course suited her. Just her... I think of Eric Nielsen, the team director of X-Spirit, the way he described her as being a monster in the uphills, and it is a good way to describe her. When she gets an uphill, she absolutely tends to kill the other women, frankly. There's no love lost with any of the rest of them when she gets in those positions. She's improved her double poling. I mean, it's not her absolute strength, but she's an effective double poler as well.
Of course, all of them, they have to train for it. That's what this is about, basically, double poling. But, you know, as you said, you know, diagonal striding is her strength, and she was finally able to, you know, show that strength in Seefeld. But I think she will do really well today. And as I said, you know, you get a really good confidence and a boost when you win. After that, it's much easier. Also, we have to remember that you know, it remains to be seen who has recovered, you know, the best, you know, from last weekend, because this is the fourth race in a row, and the last weekend was so much tougher than anyone expected. So that'll be interesting to see, you know, who's going to be, because for this type of race, you really need the you know, the speed, and your muscles need to be really ready for something like this. This is pace-wise, this is so much faster than, you know, Basel, for example, because it's only 30k.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask you about that. I mean, it's the big thing, isn't it? We've got this chaos, frankly, the 4 consecutive race weekends. It's great for the viewers wherever you're watching this, and everyone is a fan of the Visma Ski Classics Tour as it is. But it's very, very difficult, and I, you know, understandably picked up a bit of fatigue in the press conference yesterday, hosting that with the skiers, with the elites, because it is difficult. Some of them have tried to go home in terms of what they're doing, because obviously it's still the best skiers, the elites. A lot of them tend to be Scandinavian-based, Scandinavian skiers, so they're quite a long way away from home, and it's difficult. Otherwise, you're away in Central Europe for a month, and they've got young families, a lot of them, so they try and go away a little bit. I know Britta, for instance, did that, not this week, but if you think of the previous week from the Marcia Longa before going to Seefeld, she wanted to go home because she's got a little daughter, 4-year-old, Emilia as well, and wanted to go home and do that. And that's important, isn't it? Because it's important to stay mentally fresh as much as anything. It's not so much even the physical tax on you. it's the fact that you're away from home for so long. It can really get you down mentally if you're not careful.
You're right about that. So there's a difference between the young skiers and the old ones. The old ones tend to have old ones, but the ones that've been in the circuit for a long time, they tend to have families, and their kids and so forth. They have to go back. I actually talked to John Christian Dahl at the airport, after last weekend's race, and that's what he did. He said he has to go back home to see his family, and of course the traveling is always taxing. You go back and forth, even if we in Europe where the flights tend to be relatively short, but still you have to do traveling. So training-wise, it's not the most optimal. But as you said, you have to go back and see your family once in a while. But then some of the team members stay here, for most of the time. Some even for the whole month when you're really away from home. So it depends on the person and your personality and your personal preferences. But yeah, that's something that's kind of new for this season because all the races are back to back.
Yeah, it's fascinating because we're always at pains to point out as we look at these women, Norgren still continuing to lead the way, just, over a couple of kilometres gone now. But you look through this women's field, we can dwell on it with the men's race as well, the teams as they are. What some of them look to do, I look at, for instance, and obviously more information on vismaskiclassics.com on all these pro teams, but if you think of some of the other skiers, you think of Christina Roberto, Sarah Limborg in this field from the skistart.com team, they've mixed it up a little bit, talking to them as well, because, they're a team in the middle of Sweden or whatever there. Some of them sometimes have stayed down, they've broken up a little bit, and other times, some of them have gone home, other times they go straight on to the next race. It's all, I suppose it's how you feel a little bit, isn't it, as an individual, with these races, race to race, and adapting to it as well. You don't always have a set plan, like we're going to do this after this particular race, we're going to go home. I think you adapt to it a little bit. If I need to go home for a couple of days, I'm going to go home for a couple of days and then come back hopefully refreshed.
And also what's been really difficult for the skiers and, the organizers and the Visma Ski Classics team is this bad winter. So plans tend to change. So you might have a really perfect plan, but suddenly, races, moved up to another place, and like it happened last week, and luckily it was pretty close. And Seefeld, is a kind of a place for many of these teams to do their training, and they usually tend to pick one place in Central Europe where they kind of go back to, where they have the base for the training and so forth. And that's a good thing about Central Europe. Everything's so close, so it's not that far. You can drive and fly to different places pretty quickly. But of course, for Scandinavians, it's a bit trickier because they have to go back to Norway and Sweden and to Finland as well.
Yeah, the ski start team are interesting because they're from the Örebro area of Sweden, right in the middle, if you like, Dalarna, the region there. But it was interesting also talking to some of the other teams as well, the Silvini Matsus team, the Czech team, the leading Czech team in Visma Ski Classics, because they, of course, have here Klara Moravchova in this field. But they've been... It's funny talking to them because they always are saying, we're talking about the difficulties with the snow in Central Europe. In these Zerska Mountains, Bedřichov, it's fantastic. Why would we want to go anywhere else? That's where we train. So they tend to, Rezac has been on his own a bit, but actually they've tended to go home quite a bit in between the races and train there as well. So it's fascinating seeing the different techniques as we take a look at where they are in the course. Still at the moment, if you look at in terms of the course profile, they're dropping down now gradually. About 5 kilometers in, I suppose, is the low point in altitude in this course profile. That's about, 1,131 meters above sea level. And then it's a gradual climb, more or less, in this course. Before they, of course, much later on at 25 kilometers in, reach that high point in altitude. But you can just see them coming down now. Our skidoo is doing its wonderful work, our little machines. What would it be like to drive one of those things? I haven't managed to do that yet. Talking to the guys, though, on our team, they have some good fun, although I think it was a bit harem-scarum in Seefeld last weekend with some of the downhills and the curvy nature. I think they're looking forward to this course a little bit more, dealing with it today.
Yes, it was pretty pretty dangerous there, particularly the last downhill. There was a 3 times 22K loop, and the final hill towards the kind of this, let's call it the stadium area, that was a bit tricky, and some dirty snow there, and really narrow. So it was tricky for skiers, but also for ski-doo drivers as well. But sometimes, it's a bit tricky for skiers as well, because they're driving there. Of course, we need the cameras, like right now we get a nice, perfect, shot, of the skiers approaching. but it's a bit tricky, you know, because sometimes they're there and they might just, if it's really narrow, they might just kind of kill the, you know, the second track.
Which is, yeah, it's not good, obviously, because you do need those 2 tracks there. But here they are, as I say, on this downhill at the moment. Bonner leading the way at the moment down towards this 5-kilometre point, which is the low point in altitude in the race before they start climbing gradually again, and particularly in the first part for the next 15 kilometres or so, through to about just under that, in fact. Then they'll go slightly downhill again, and then a climb up to the high point in the race. But here they are at the moment, controlling themselves on that downhill stretch, with Bonner leading the way. It was interesting what you said about her, because the fact she could get a boost from winning last weekend seems here to starting off pretty confident. I mean, presumably her tactics, if we dwell on her a bit for a moment, technically, Teemu, for her, we talk about those little uphills, those gradual climbs. She's going to look to really make that count in this race wherever possible.
Most likely, although she's double poling. In the last week, and it was she could use really her, you know, strength with the diagonal strides. She's really good at that. You have to remember that she's done Olympic and World Championship races and performed really well. She's placed herself in the top 10, you know, in those races. And in those ones, you tend to use, you still tend to use the, you know, the good old diagonal striding. For classic races. I mean, of course, some of the World Cup races have been done, have been won by double poling, but we haven't really seen anyone double poling in the Olympics yet, or in the World Championships. But that might even happen. We'll see. But yes, we'll see. But I think the double polers will be really strong.
You talk about a good double polar here. Annika Lufström, we were just looking at. I mentioned at the outset, tremendous to see her put in that 6th place result in Seefeld, because she's had issues, as I said, with well, a professional athlete has to deal with. But it was fascinating hearing from her about that, about the challenges, because she was actually signed, thinking about it, from Ski Pro-Am. It wasn't last summer, it was actually the summer before, and I think everyone expected, she was 4th in the overall classification a couple of years ago in Ski Classics. Last year, very, very disappointing. Really just one race, I think it was the Jezerska where she did okay, but struggled with her health. And I know Krista Skud, who's got a key role within Team Expert, has been doing a lot of work. They really do leave no stone unturned, that team. They really do focus on the technology side of things. I think they've been focusing on her training and also her recovery, actually. Her sleep patterns is something that they've been looking at with all the athletes in their team. But it was fantastic to see her get a great result there, get back in amongst the top finishers in Seefeld, and it will be interesting to see what she does here with her traditional double poling strength in this course. Maybe she can go even better than 6th. Making a good start to this race at the moment, the Swede Lufström.
Yeah, it's tough, so, you know, for the skiers, because sometimes, you know, you just have to face some challenges, you know, and she's not the only one who has, you know, been sick, or, you know, because that happens quite a lot. And some of the careers get, you know, destroyed by being sick for a, you know, long period of time, you know, and it's I mean, Anders Auckland had a misfortune and so forth. A lot of the skiers, you know, sometimes face that. You know, it's particularly skiing being a winter sport. You're always outside, breathing in cold air, so you get a lot of you know flus and, you know, and stuff like that going on. So, and some people tend to be more sensitive about it, like Olsson, for example. You know, seems to be a guy who's always sick, or so. It's tough, you know. You have to be careful. We talked about the being in one place or traveling. That's one thing that also you have to be really careful about when you travel a lot. You hop on a plane and so forth. You might catch a flu or any disease, you know, when traveling, because you're a little bit tired, you know, after a race, and there's a lot of people in one place, you know. So it's a lot of things that a lot of factors you have to kind of take into account, you know.
Indeed. We take a look out over the course here, winding through the forests, through the shrubbery. Where are they now? They're about 6 kilometres in. We've got our first kind of significant checkpoint. Of course, you have the live GPS tracking as well through the Visma Ski Classics website available to you, vismaskiclassics.com, or, as I say, more information on these skiers, how they're doing, through the app as well, available for both iPhone and Android technologies. The Visma Ski Classics app available to download for free as well. But first significant checkpoint, actually seeing how they're doing for timing. And there are fairly tightly bunched group at the moment. We have a 9-kilometre point or so. It's about 9.5, isn't it? Not quite 10 at Niederdorf, which is more relevant to the men's competition because, of course, they have the green sprint bib that Andreas Niergaard is dominating. But for the women, it just gives us a chance to see how they're doing. As I say, that's at about 9.5 kilometres into the race, but they are just over 6 in now. And a little climb here at the moment, a little uphill at the moment. See some of the service staff as well, the pro teams as well. We always like to make the point of referencing them, don't we, Tammy? Because the fantastic work they do, all the teams have guys out on the course handing out drinks, instructions and everything. It's a massive part of what this is about.
Of course, you know, that's particularly in the long races like Vasaloppet and Marcialonga. That takes a lot of, you know, careful planning beforehand, where to be, how to do it, and also the skiers pass so quickly. You have to make sure that they will be able to grab the drink, you know, which sometimes doesn't work out, you know, and you have to find a perfect spot for it. You're usually just right after an uphill, so that they can take the drink and drink it, you know, take their time to drink it, and then have a kind of a gradual downhill, not too fast, but like that spot seemed to be really perfect, you know, for handing out a drink to skiers. And also speaking of double poling, you know, because me and on a gradual climb right now, so the technique-wise, it's a bit different, you know, when you do uphill double poling compared to you know, doing it on flats. And some people tend to be really good at because you need more strength, you know, when you go double poling. And some people are really good at flats. That's something that I've noticed by doing these races, that a lot of people can do double poling really well on flat parts. But like Seefeld, because I did the race afterwards in the Lidwanlu, and I noticed in our group, you know, a lot of people went really fast in the flats. But then once we got to the uphill, technique-wise, you know, they didn't really have it. You know, they just couldn't do it. You know, and most of the guys in our group, they used, you know, kickbacks. I was the one doing it, you know, double poling all the way through. So it takes a little bit, you know, training and to do that, you know, the steep hills as well, which the Norwegians and the Swedes do a lot. You know, they do long climbs, you know, double poling in the summertime as well.
Indeed. We take a look at that lead group. It is a lead group. We're expecting this in the men's race as well, because this, you're always pretty fair about things, Tammy. The first 10 kilometres of this race, we talk about the little uphills, but for these elites, even with the women, it's fairly easy, this first, let's be honest, it's 10 kilometres, and there's not really any opportunity in the first 10K for anyone, even in a 30-kilometre race, any of these these elites, to get a massive lead over the others, just isn't that sort of opportunity.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I don't think we'll see any kind of a breakaway here, you know, maybe towards the end a little bit, but then we have to remember the last part is, you know, just a, you know, gradual downhill all the way to the finish. So
it's really actually after they pass through us, through the stadium here, the Nordic Arena, which you'll see later on in your pictures, where Tammy and myself are based at the moment. That's maybe where you could get something, because that's a gradual uphill for about 5 kilometres or so after they make the pass through the stadium. But I think here really, you first of all got these first 10 kilometres they're doing, and then actually it's the FIS World Cup course actually a little bit for 5 kilometres or so that they use next. More on that to come, because we're not there yet. But you know, there are some little climbs and everything in there, but it's not, these first 10 kilometres, it's not particularly, by their standards, it's not Seefeld anywhere near that sort of level of difficulty.
No, of course, that's probably the toughest race, you know, ever, you know, at least in Visma Ski Classics. There are a couple races that are, you know, I remember one in Białystok was actually pretty tough, the Eurolopet race, you know. But usually, I mean, because these are designed for, you know, the regular folks, you know, these are mascot events, you know, so they don't tend to be that tough, you know. That's the whole idea, you know. They tend to be kind of nice courses with a little bit of uphill, nice flats, and so forth. They, you know, just created for enjoyment, basically. But now that's
nothing wrong with that, of course.
No, of course, you know, it's. But of course, you know, because this has become a pro skiing as well, so there's a bit of a conflict between the, you know, because some of the skiers want, you know, tougher courses, you know, like Seefeld, but then again, it's fighting against the kind of the traditional thinking, you know, that, you know, these races should be long and kind of easy and nice.
We've got Masako Ishida here at the back of this leading group, who didn't compete actually last weekend, but was doing very well in the Holmenkollen 30K, which is it's a big women's race. Actually got a top 10 finish there, finished 9th. So in some good form, of course, is Shida, who won La Diagonella last season. That's her one and only Visma Ski Classic stage win today. We're just taking some of the surrounds here at the moment, not dwelling with the skiers. We want to show you what they're skiing through. Not that they'll really be focused on that at the moment. These wonderful surrounds. And of course, where we approach, I mentioned it already, 9.5 kilometers or so, Niederdorf, or in Italian, Villa Bassa. Always those dual pronunciations, dual bits of language as well, because it is dual here, if you think about it, the southern Tyrol, but of course Trento as well, and the cooperation that goes on between the Italian and German governments in that respect. And as a result, the fantastic rich cultural mix that you get going on here. It was interesting to hear Bruno de Bertelis of Excalibur Lille Sport, someone who knows this race as well as anyone, a home guy, if you like, of the race, talking about how much, telling me yesterday, I was speaking to him, saying how much it means to the community. And you think about Marcialonga being important to the community, but here as well, and building partnerships between the community as well. You think mainly German-speaking part of the world here, but then you think we aren't going down to Cortina d'Ampezzo, but towards the more Italian part of things. And yeah, the partnerships that exist there between the these neighbouring regions.
And I think that those partnerships also allows us to have these races, that like Marcialonga was quite an undertaking, and same, you can sense the same spirit here as well, that people in these villages, they're really excited about having these events here, and not just this one, but many other ones too. So it's really important for them, and that's part of the the lure and the beauty of long distance skiing. That's why, like Scandinavians, we come to these places because there's something magical about the Central European races and going through these villages and the landscapes, and surrounded by beautiful mountains and villages and so forth. So it's really something extraordinary.
Indeed. We have Katarina Smutner here of Team Santander, just taking the front. They're taking turns really at the moment, this lead group, to hit the front, do the hard work if you like. The others can just sit in behind Norgren and Bonner and Lufström and Ishida and the rest of them.
We got a little bit new snow last night, and we can see that we have enough snow, but it's not that much really. I mean, they used to see much more in this region. But we have a little bit new snow here, so it seems that it might be affecting them as well. But unfortunately, as I said, I had a chance to ski that, so it's a little bit difficult to say.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting discussing it with a couple of the guys here about that snow that had fallen. Maybe that would make things a little bit more difficult. It would be interesting if snow had been falling during the race. I always think that presents a massive challenge that you can't really predict how they're going to deal with that. But yeah, the fact that snow did fall, fresh snow fell overnight, is just maybe something they're having to deal with here. Maybe slows it down a touch, if anything, the course conditions, because we were expecting in advance, looking at this redesigned course, a pretty fast race. Actually, for me, looking at it personally, Teemu, interesting your thoughts on this. I, in advance, kind of thought maybe a little bit like La Scambeda in that way, quick course, quick time overall. I know that was loops there, but it was a fast race overall there in Livigno at the start of this Visma Ski Classic season. 24 kilometers, of course, overall. I expected something similar, but maybe the snow that's fallen overnight on the course is just maybe just going to slow it down a touch. I don't know.
Oh, it will. We can see it right away. Technique-wise, they're not going that fast. In terms of tempo, because the snow back there, was really fast. It was artificial snow all the way through, and really fast snow. Over here, we don't have the same conditions. But that's part of the winter sport. Different conditions. That's not like running where you basically have sunshine and rain.
Yeah.
But the surface is always kind of the same. It's unless it gets really windy. But over here we have so many different factors. And we could talk about skis. For hours. Because it's not that easy to select the skis. That's a whole. Like in Seefeld, I was actually, when I was doing my training the day before, on the same loop over and over. So I was able to kind of. Just watch and see, but the surface people, and some people, they spend hours on testing skis. you know, the whole day basically. They start in the morning and just, you know, they had like they had like, you know, hundreds of pairs, you know, maybe hundreds, but you know, tens and tens of, you know, different pairs, and they tested them, you know, and skied, you know, did all kinds of, you know, different speed trainings and stuff like that, just to, because when you do ski testing, it's not just the glide, you have to test them, because I've talked to some of the you know, testers, well, let's call them that way. And actually, I have some friends that have done that. You know, a good friend of mine used to be Mika Myllylä's ski tester, who's actually in our team doing a lot of long distance skiing. So he said, you know, that it's a tough work. You know, that you spend a whole day doing sprints all day because you have to do a lot of fast skiing, because that's what you do in a race. So you have to be a good skier to be a ski tester, because you have to be able to do that, you know, for a whole day, and to be able to do the same pace as the elite skiers do, at least for a certain time, to make sure. Because if you just do it, you know, downhill and do easy skiing, that's not going to give you the whole picture. You need to know how the skis are functioning in certain conditions and in certain speed.
They come through now to the first significant checkpoint where we can see how they're doing. Of course, I mentioned Niederdorf here at 10 kilometers. Officially, actually, it's been clocked. It's about 70 kilometers here now. They are northeast of Bolzano here in Niederdorf, and they are coming up through now to 10 kilometers, so we can get some updated numbers for you in a moment. And it's Sorina Bonner who's just got the nod there through that 10-kilometer point, but you can see it's a massive pack, really, as we were discussing at the moment. All those six within 3 seconds of the Swiss at the moment. There's actually a little bit of disagreement here from that on our live timing that we've got. We've actually got Norgan through first of all over Bonner. We'll get that cleared up for you. But the fact is we've got 6 there who are all in 3 seconds. Overall 6-7 skiers, and actually Cristina Roberto is in 8th, is only 7 seconds behind. So at the moment, it's very, very tightly packed there through the first 10 kilometres, as we expected, really, in the women's race. We're going to turn our attentions now to the men who are just warming up. They're a few minutes away from beginning. All the big names involved here as we look at this start list headed by Petter Eliasson at the moment, the man from Team Lease-Blanco with a 140-point lead over Tord Jedalen of Team Santander wearing 7. You look down the field, and Bruno de Bertelis, I mentioned, 3-time actually former winner of the Gran Fondo, this race, before it's joined Visma Ski Classics this season. He knows this course tremendously well, and we look at some of the others, real experience there as well, in the likes of Anders Södergren, who's raced the last couple of Ski Classic stages, now really getting into the swing of things, the Swede. There's the man wearing the pink youth bib. We mentioned earlier what a tight battle it is between Stian Erlegaard and Anders Host, the Team Lease-Blanco Tigers, as they are. He's got a, this is at the moment, his lead is 104 points. He managed just to extend it, carve up a bit more of an advantage over Host after the results in Austria in Seefeld. But that's the man they've all got to beat. The man who, it's interesting, hearing from Henrik Kvissel of Team United Bakeries right at the start of the season, very complimentary about Eliasson. I think they all are saying that last season he taught the rest of the field how to double pole, and he's been doing it again largely this season. I guess the one big disappointment for him was the Marcialonga, because it was a big goal for him for the season, other than retaining the yellow bib for Eliasson. But of course he managed only second there overall. Tord Jedalen was the winner that day.
It was a really tight fight.
Yeah, it was a fantastic race, wasn't it, that one overall. About an hour and a half away from us, actually, here in the Dolomites, Val di Fasta and the Val di Fiemme, but that's in the history books now. Jedalen, the winner of that race for the last 2 years now, timed, as he did 12 months ago, actually timed his push brilliantly. He was on the podium last weekend, but he faded a bit, actually, at the back end of the race in Seefeld. He was in contention there, maybe for another race victory, but he didn't seem at the end to have quite enough left to go for the win that day.
Yeah, that's what he said, that he just didn't have this stamina and the strength to win the race, but he did his best, and he was really happy that it was a tough race. He's one of the guys, you know, who's constantly, you know, voicing his kind of, you know, hope to get the, you know, the tougher races, and he got one last weekend. Yeah. We'll see how this goes. You know, he's actually, we have to remember that he came from the standard skiing, World Cup skiing. So this should be a good course for him, you know, because he's done a lot of, you know, shorter distances in the past. And he knows what it takes to be fast and so on. And also we have to remember that this is not just the elite men, there's the whole rest of the group, you know, all the regular people.
Yeah, fantastic point you make. It's a huge part of what we're about, really, Visma Ski Classics. You look at the amateurs there as well, the chance to ski with the very best in the sport in long distance skiing and cross-country skiing here. These amateurs who've signed up, because this race, as I mentioned, Bruno de Bertelis, who's in the elite field, has won this race 3 times before. This race has been going, this is actually the 39th year of the Gran Fondo here in Toblach Dobbiaco Cortina, as this race is. But the elites will lead them off, as always. Of course, we saw there the other bib holder, Andreas Nygaard, runaway holder of the green sprint bib at the moment. Those are your bib holders, and the others will be chasing them, and the amateurs will be looking to enjoy it as well, I think, the opportunity. It's great to see the amateurs actually starting the same time as the elite men, because we haven't had that chance too often because we've had issues with the races. But this is what we're about. Look at that. That's a fantastic image. That tells you everything you need to know about what we're about. And the men's race is underway for 2016. The first time, of course, that the Toblach Dobbiaco Cortina is under the Visma Ski Classics umbrella. Great to have this race in our calendar. And it is the men underway then as they begin, as the women did, was it about half an hour ago now, in Prague, in Brieš-Ferrara. It's a little community of about 700 people, I think, live here, west of where we are in the Nordic arena in Toblach. Basically, pretty much exclusively German-speaking part of the world, but that Italian heritage as well.
And I think one of the reasons, you know, for this race to have all these people starting at the same time is that that's what the organizers wanted to do. They actually wanted to have everyone in the start line. I guess they could have done the original, you know, course, you know, all the way to Cortina, but only for the elite. And they figured, well, that's not the idea. You know, we would love to have all of the skiers together. So this is kind of a compromise then. You know, that the elite skiers get a little bit of a shorter race, but we get this, you know, beautiful scenery of having all these people on the, you know, the course, which is, you know, what this, you know, sport is about. You know,
I mean, it was disappointing. I mean, with Cortina, it was interesting hearing from Stephanie Santa about that, because of course the Santa sisters here are a big part of Dobbiaco Toblach folklore, if you like, because of course they're former Winter Olympians from the Calgary Games in '88, and now involved in organising the race. Stephanie and Natalie as well. Natalie is the chief of competition here, and Stephanie, the assistant chief of competition, admitting that it was disappointing for me, actually, personally, Tammy. It was disappointing not to have the race in Cortina, because it's one of my favourite James Bond films. It was filmed there, of course. Part of it was filmed in Cortina for your eyes only. I thought I'd get that one in anyway. Nothing to do with cross-country skiing, but of course, you know, viewers there will know about the James Bond franchise, and well, it's a shame. It's a shame not to go down there and not actually have the end of the race there and think about, oh, that was used in the film and everything as well. But no, still, to have got this race on, fantastic job from the organisers.
But hey, James Bond did some downhill skiing though, some of the films. Yeah, it's right. I mean, Cortina is the Ambessa. It's a famous place, and well, hopefully next year, you know, we get to go down there. And it's definitely a place that, you know, most of us, at least if we haven't been there, at least we know the place. There's some kind of, you know, magic about the place, not just the James Bond, you know, connection, but, you know, it's just a famous place in Italy, and it's a nice, one of those, you know, nice Central European villages, you know, towns, you know, that has a special atmosphere.
Well, we're staying pretty much, we've been staying there pretty much, not actually here in Toblach, our hotel's been there, and actually I skied a little bit yesterday morning, and it's just fantastic. I was doing a little bit actually of the Women's World Cup, the downhill there, that section, and great snow conditions there actually, but yeah, there were some issues that meant, as you said, as you've discussed already, and we don't want to dwell on that because we've got a race here, but it will be great in years to come, I'm sure, to get that race going all the way down to Cortina, to the finish there in the town. But here we are, just beginning, just about a kilometre and a half into the race. It's exactly the same course, of course. Those of you not familiar with how Visma Ski Classics works, not like as is the case in FIS World Cup, where the men and the women can ski different lengths of track. Here in Visma Ski Classics is the same, and that was the thing in Seefeld. You know, the men found it difficult, for instance, last weekend. The women, you know, they really fronted up brilliantly because they're skiing exactly the same course, and the same again here today.
Exactly, and that's the great thing about these races, that which actually kind of makes me wonder that, you know, why do we still have 30K in the Olympics and the World Championships. Why can't women do 50K like men?
It's a bit old-fashioned, isn't it? Really, I mean, at Visma Ski Classics, there is a bit, is taking the lead there again. It is modern. I think, to be honest, the World Cups. I think there's a school of thought they should look at that a bit. Why can't the women do 50K Classic or whatever when the men are doing it? Why are they doing less, overall? Because most of the time their races are shorter in terms of those classic technique races. So, yeah, it's something I think for them to look at. I think there's been a bit of discussion about that. But for Visma Ski Classics, it's the same for the men and the women. And it's great to have that feature of things.
Even Vasalop, 90K, it's the same for women as well. I mean, they have Basan, but for Ski Classics, Visma Ski Classics, it's the same course, the same race.
See here early on, very early stages, of course, in the men's race, Morten Eder Pedersen of Team Expert. We, of course, want to look at the women as well. We get this great split screen feature that we can bring you as well in our coverage, where we can look across both races, because, of course, the women had a 30-minute head start on the men, so they're quite a bit further ahead now at the moment, well over 10 kilometres into their race, 12 now, actually, they've just ticked by, and it's still that group. How do you actually see it going here? We haven't discussed this. I mean, we anticipate in the men's race a group, particularly to the final 8-9 kilometres of the race, maybe in attack. Do you see something similar happening in the women's race?
Most likely, and I think that by just looking at them right now and looking at the track, I don't think it's that fast. So which means that most likely no one's really skied on the track. So which makes it a little bit more, more difficult, for women to really maintain a really fast, high speed there. So I think it'll be pretty much, maybe some of the girls might kind of be. I'm not really expecting like a huge breakaway here. It's going to be 4 or 5 skiers all the way to the end. Maybe not this whole group, but at least that many. But could be all of these girls.
Indeed. Here at the moment at Astrid Slint here of Team United Bakeries. Just behind her, of course, we have some of the other leaders as well. This lead group of, how many is it? It's about 8. This lead group of women. We look at the start of the race in terms of how many started. We had 16 or so, 15 or 16 or so. So we've got half there overall who've managed to stay in that lead group. At the moment, as I say, Slint, who was brilliant last weekend in Seefeld with that second place finish. This is actually her first year of Visma Ski Classics, but she's leading that group at the moment, the skier from Team United Bakeries right now. As I say, they're about 12.5 kilometres in, but we will rejoin the men who are just starting their race right now as they go over that little bridge. Heading up, of course, towards 5 kilometres into the race. That's uphill that they do first of all, and then it'll be the drop down towards 5 kilometres in the men's race. Very, very different race overall, particularly for them. We talked about the women's race. Maybe we don't fancy Bonner to back up the win last weekend because of the different course profile, but particularly for the men, actually, it's going to be interesting to see some of the traditional strong sprinters, whether they can deal with this course a little bit better than they were able to do last weekend in Austria. Pedersen, of course, is a pretty good sprinter. He's done well in the sprint standings, actually, in the past in Visma Ski Classics, but a very good all-round skier as well.
And it seems to me that his tactic is just to go just full throttle all the way, just from the beginning, just all guns blazing,
I mean, could you see someone doing that? I mean, it being 30 kilometres, 32 kilometres, that's, I suppose, the next point, really, with the course it is. We talked about World Cup lengths, of course. Could someone do that, go really, really hard from the off, like we see sometimes in those World Cup races, and just sustain it? Or is it too difficult to do in this dynamic, in this setup?
Well, traditionally 30K is an interesting race. It used to be it still is, but now it's usually the pursuit race, which is combined skating and classic. But it used to be a race of its own in the Olympics and World Championships, and it was always kind of a tricky distance because it's much longer than 15K, obviously, but not as long as 50K. So the question of pacing yourself was really important in a 30K. But nowadays you tend to go as fast as you can. Of course, you have to slow down a little bit and be a little bit careful in the early parts. But These skiers and then on this course, it's pretty much just like skiing a 15K World Cup race, pretty much for them. It's just as fast as they can go. It's still about an hour, 15 minutes or so. It's not that long. You don't really get the endurance part of it there, because usually when you go over 2 hours, 3 hours, then you have to, consider the the energy and then the fat burning and all that kind of stuff.
They're coming into this downhill that we talked about earlier towards 5 kilometers. That's what the men are doing towards that low point in altitude of just over 1,100 meters of sea level. Pedersen here, as you said, going very, very hard from the off. Morten Edde Pedersen, 28 years of age now, of course fourth at La Scambeda. A little bit disappointing last weekend actually in Seefeld overall for Pedersen. A few of the other guys you can see behind as well. Fredrik Byström there from the Lager 157 ski team, and his teammate there, Marcus Ottosson, who we've actually seen some good stuff from this season, particularly actually picking up a fair few sprint points. He's second for what it's worth behind Andreas Neergaard. He's got, what is it, overall 90 points, but that is 280 points, the small matter of 280 points behind the Santander man. But Ottosson's been good to see, hasn't he? Because it's good to see these guys. I mean, he's 29 years of age. It's good to see different names come through as well. And Ottosson is certainly someone who's impressed us at points so far this season.
Yeah, we have to remember that he's the guy who was in the lead, for about 15 kilometers in Marcialonga, and did really well there. So, yeah, the other guy, Fredrik, he's done some good races, not just in Visma ski classes, but in Sweden as well. So both of these, and in Basel, both of them. So these skiers are definitely forces to be reckoned with, in the future. I think they've already done pretty well. Right here, they had nothing to lose, so they just pretty much try to keep up with them, Morten Edde Pedersen, and see how far they can go. And this, and this is what we talked about earlier, is that that these teams, they just need the visibility as well. So it's good to do something like this, instead of just being the lead group all the way through, and they will kind of be invisible.
Yeah, we see it actually sometimes, guys. I mean, Pedersen's doing it here, trying to hit the front from the off, but we actually see guys. I remember Klaas Nielsen doing that over the years with the 7 Mila team. They've changed now, Pelagia team now this year, changing sponsor, but Klaas often did that. He kind of hit the front enjoyed himself the TV time up the front. Good skier, but he wasn't looking to win the race overall, but some time up the front. It's important, isn't it, in terms of getting exposure? Sponsors are an important part. I mean, of any sport. This is not just here in terms of keeping your sponsors and also trying to attract new ones, and TV time is valuable.
And hey, that's what your countryman did, Andrew Musgrave, once in Vasaloppet. I remember he was like in the lead, and taking the lead in pretty much until the first 20 or 30K. But then obviously got tired, I actually passed him, just before the finish, But, yeah, sometimes you just have to do that. And I think it helped his career quite a lot, People, at least in Scandinavia, they started to, because at that time he wasn't really that known, they started to talk about him. Who is this guy from the UK? Like, who is this skier?
I got the same questions as well when I started commentating in this. Brits are not really known to be fans, but it's a great sport to be involved with overall. Morten Edde Pedersen, you look at the numbers, as I said, very good La Scambeda start to the season, podium as well, La Diagoneta, but last weekend he did struggle a little bit. I think Erik Nielsen and the rest of the team a bit surprised about that overall, because you can see the rest of the results this season have been pretty solid from him, from the Norwegian.
Yeah, and he was really strong in Jizerska, he took, he was in a breakaway, for a long time until Eliassen, caught him up. But I think he's been a bit disappointed as a season. Was definitely aiming at being at the podium, and pretty much he never raced. It's been a tough season.
I think you look at the yellow bib, frankly, as well. Pedersen. I mean, he was over 4 minutes back last weekend in Seefeld, and that's not where he wants to be. I mean, finishing, top 20. That's not what he's about. I mean, he's a guy who's come up through the Ski Classics foundation, really, if you like, with the pink bib. Doing that in the past and winning stages, and I think this season he was really looking to push Petter Eliasson and the rest of them at the head of the yellow bib race a lot more, but it's not really happened for him in that regard, despite some good solid results. Last weekend clearly doesn't help him, finishing that far down that Seefeld field. And they're setting, seems to be a good pace here actually from the men in these early stages, helped I think by Pedersen and Byström, and as well the others, a few of the others, the pace they've set from the off here, as we can see, and we look at as well at the women again, further up the field, of course, further up the track.
And the women are actually in that part where we have a bit of a climb. Some of the steepest hills are just there.
Yeah, they're heading across now, gradually, the women actually towards where I'll make that pass at the Nordic Arena, where we are in Toblach. The men does appear setting a good pace here in these early stages. Could it be a little bit the women have skied the track already? Can that help them? Because you say the fact that when the women, you know, they're negotiating the first time, does that help the men a little bit that the women, I know it's only 15, 20 skiers, does it help a little bit the tracks have been skied through once already for the men here?
Even that can help, you know, if you have 20 skiers, you know, if there's new snow and you have 20 skiers, that of course that'll help. It's not that many skiers. If you had 100, that would make a huge difference. But yes, of course, you know, that's something that always helps men, you know, when they do this, that the women start, you know, before men, particularly in really poor conditions, you know, when it's snowing, which is always tricky.
Back with the women here, and Nordgren just swapping tracks. They're just trying to find the best conditions overall. Serena Bonner really putting in a shift there, working hard. You can see that. The technique here at this stage, very, very good from all of them, because, I mean, fatigue isn't an issue. I know you're a big man on this, on breaking down technique and everything with the double poling, and Bonner is, Nordgren as well in the double poling is the best of the lot, but a lot of them here, good exponents of it over all the women.
Actually, Bonner's technique was really good at that uphill. You know, really, really nice one. So she's definitely, as I said, she got that confidence, you know, boost. She was kind of doubting her double poling a little bit, you know, in the early season. You know, when I had some interviews with her, it's like, yeah, we'll see, you know, and she was kind of, you know, counting on her, you know, diagonal striding more than double poling. But it seems that, you know, she's got her, you know, confidence back, you know, and doing really well. Technically, it was really good tempo. She kept her body in a good position, you know, and so forth. It seems relatively simple, you know, the double poling. Oh, it's easy to do, but it's not that easy, actually. It's not that easy to do it perfectly well. And there's a little bit, there are some variations in terms of the technique and the pole length and all that. So.
Tell us a bit more about that. I mean, because we see that, you know, you think of double poling as, I think a lot of viewers actually maybe wouldn't know about the differences. They think, okay, understand double poling and everything, but talk to us a bit about that, maybe you see in this men's field actually different approaches to what is the dominant technique in the sport.
Yeah, we have to remember that double poling has always been there. It's always been a part of the classic, you know, technique. In the 80s and 70s and 80s, it used to be different. We used to go all the way down, you know, to bend our backs, you know, and we had shorter poles, of course, because we used, you know, the diagonal, you know, the classic poles. But now it has changed so that if you look at these men, we don't do it's not like it used to be. We don't go that much down anymore. And the actual push is much shorter, particularly in the uphills. We don't go all the way down when we used to go with the arms, you know, to stretch them out all the way through. And also, you kind of spread your elbows a little bit. It looks like you used to have your arms really close to your body and just push there. But now you kind of open them up a little bit, as you can see over here.
It was a good comparison there, actually, between the lead men and the women here, who are going to focus on here. I mean, Nordgren is probably the best double poler in the women's field, I mean, we could say. But look at Bonner as well. Good chance for you to compare their techniques here.
Yeah, look at the elbows here. You can see the elbows, you know, on both of them. You know, that's what I meant, you know, with spreading them out a little bit. Because before we used to keep the elbows really close to your body. And the double poling was a long one, a long push all the way down. You went down, your face almost, you know, well, they didn't really touch the skis, but almost that you went that far down, which you don't do that much. Actually, they are going, because it depends on your stomach muscles and you know how well you can keep that double poling position. And the uphills, of course, you tend to go a little bit down, and you tend to bend your knees a little bit as well. But when you go to the flat parts, you don't bend your knees. That's one thing too that has changed. If you look at their legs, you know, it's not that much movement there. It's a little bit. You bend your knees a little bit there, as you can see, and then both of these over here. And before we used to go more of an up and down movement. So it definitely has changed in terms of the the classic skiing. The double poling has changed the most. The diagonal stride is still pretty much the same. You still have to glide on the ski. Same with the skating. It's all about gliding. And we have to remember that double poling is evolving all the time. So we see a little bit of different techniques here and there. Some people still tend to, prefer to have longer poles. Some people say, no, shorter ones are better because they give you faster tempo. Well, it remains to be seen what is the actual, the perfect length. It's kind of an individual choice at the moment.
Yeah, still much more to develop, and you, of course, did that, mentioned it already, that great article available on vismaskiclassics.com. If you search back through the news items, it was published a little while ago now with Tony Ruppinen, the Finn, and very, very key figure in cross-country skiing, talking to you actually about double poling and touching on some of the points there, more discussion of that. But no, fascinating to get your thoughts on the technique, because it is the dominant, particularly in this course profile, it is what we'll see. I mean, last weekend was different, and it was refreshing to see in Seefeld, see classic technique, especially seeing Sorina Bonner in particular doing it, because there are a few better exponents. Although I have to say, the man in yellow here, we don't see him doing it really much anymore, but Petter Eliasson is a wonderful classic technique skier as well. You see him going up a gradient with wax. We don't, as I say, see it too much anymore, but he is a wonderful exponent of it, and I still think it is, aesthetically, it is the thing in the sport, is someone going up a gradient who actually has wonderful classic diagonal stride, as you put it. But the men here, we see Eliasson there taking up position. We have this sprint checkpoint at 10 kilometers at Niederdorf. The women went through. It's important, of course, for the men, because we see whether Andreas Niergaard can continue his push. He's won 8 of the 10 sprint competitions so far. He could indeed mathematically wrap up the green sprint bib, presented by Soltdalshytte. Is that decent pronunciation attempt? Getting there.
Getting there. Close. Good.
But the Norwegian cabin manufacturing company who sponsor the green sprint bib, and Andreas Niergaard, of course, will be looking to wrap it up in this race. He can do that, and I think he'll be looking to get it done as soon as possible, really. Be interesting, actually, to see whether he can contend in this race. Asked him about it this week. He was a bit coy, talking about his chances. The fact that it is shorter, because that's always the problem, isn't it? You prioritise things. He's prioritised the green sprint bib so clearly. A longer race, you put so much into peaking for those checkpoints, you can't really contend for the race win overall. Here, though, if he gets a good race going, avoids accidents like happened to him last time with the pole break, he can get in position maybe, for a very, very high finish here, because the course could suit him well. Here they come then. They're actually coming through now, making this pass through to the first sprint checkpoint, as it is. And they are through, and it's Marcus Ottosson who we talked about there, who's got it for the Lager 157 ski team. Just nipped in there in the end, I believe, ahead of Morten Eder Pedersen. The other points, Fredrik Byström, more points to the Lager 157 team with third. Petter Eliasson in fourth, and Daniel Rickardsson in fifth. So Andreas Niergaard is way down, and then actually see him on the standings at the moment.
There he is, 26th.
Yeah, 26th, way down. He just didn't get involved in
that's interesting.
In that sprint checkpoint at all. So it's the first time actually this season that he's been out of the points on a sprint checkpoint, because he's won 8 of the 10, now 8 of the 11. But it's Marcus Ottosson there with the points. So effectively getting 40 points back there on Andreas Niergaard. Still a long way, it has to be said. He is now 240 points behind Niergaard, so I'd say the Santander man's still a huge favourite.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there. He might have some problems there, because that's quite unusual for him to be that far behind 26th. Could be that the skiers are skiing so fast that but he should be able to keep up with this pace. This is so maybe there's a problem. Something he should be up there. He's been there in every single sprint so far, except this one. So it's.
Yeah, no, it's interesting actually looking at those sprint standings. Of course, those points count towards the team competition as well, and it's interesting seeing Lager 157 getting some points there, because it's a tight battle actually going on for third with Team Expert. Of course, they've got some points there as well, because they've got Pedersen in second, and also the 5 points even in fifth spot that Daniel Rickardsson has managed to pick up there as well. But there is a tight battle going on as you look through. But the big surprise there, the fact that Nergård is not in the first 2 pages of the standings through 10 kilometres there. We have to look at page 3, and there he is, 20 seconds back. So maybe he's had a problem overall, as you say, in those first 10 kilometres, because he would have prioritised that. And he's a little bit back at the moment.
So we have 29 skiers within 23 seconds. Jürgen Brink being the last one, so it's a pretty tight race.
As expected, really, isn't it? And confirmation then of those first sprint stage standings, the maximum 40 points for Marcus Ottosson. And that reduces Andreas Nergård's lead, but it is still 240 points, as I was mentioning there, for the man from Team Santander leading the sprint competition at the moment.
Oh, maybe he's just feeling, you know, the strains from last weekend's race. It was a tough one for him. He had some misfortune, you know, he broke his pole, finished the race. So I don't know, maybe there's something going on with him.
Back with taking a little look at the women here as they make a little turn there. They are, of course, further ahead. We expect them not to be caught this time, with it just being 32 kilometres this race, and the fact they have that 30-minute advanced start. What's your view on that and everything? I mean, 30 minutes about right? And we have various situations at the moment. I mean, Marcialonga, they were 10 minutes. They had the 10-minute advanced start. First time in that race's history they had that. It is interesting, isn't it, the different advantages they have. But 30 minutes here, they've come back past through us, and they're going to loop round now. They've come into the Nordic Arena here where we are, where our commentary position is based. They're making this pass here at the moment. The elite women coming through past our commentary position. You can see now we've just got a group of 3, Norgren and Bonner and Ishida, and the other 3, the next 3, have just been kind of drift a little bit of a gap as the top 3 tend to push here, and they're coming through to the second sprint at 20 kilometres here in the Nordic Arena, of course, famous location here in Toblach in Dobbiaco. And at the moment at the second sprint checkpoint at 20 kilometres conveniently, it is Britta Johansson Norgren who is through just ahead of Sorina Bonner, Misako Ishida, both of them within a second. And then, as we mentioned here, these next 3 just being cut adrift a little bit, Teemu. This is interesting now. Maybe a bit of a move being made by that top 3 to get away, because we mentioned it was a group of 8 actually through the first 13, 14, 15 kilometres of this women's race. But now Smutner and Slint have now drifted to 20 seconds back.
Yeah, that's quite interesting, actually.
And that's a decent little gap, isn't it, now at this stage, with just 12 kilometres to go of the race.
And I think it'll be enough for these 3 girls. Or women.
Yeah, Lindborg there as well. Sara Lindborg of the skistart.com team in that second group of 3. Annika Löfström now losing some ground to those 2 leading trios, now 45 seconds back from Norgren and Bonner through that second sprint checkpoint. Not a sprint checkpoint for the women, we have to keep saying that. They don't have a green sprint bit, but the second checkpoint of the race, if you like, 2/3 of the way through this race, more or less. But Lindborg there 20 seconds back, and Löfström 45 seconds back now through that second point.
And now they climb to the highest point, which is that cemetery up there. The elevation there is at 13, 18.
Yeah, it's the high point of the race there through to 25 kilometres. They'll now make their way through. They're coming through the Toblacasee, the Lago di Dobbiaco will be the next point really for those lead women, as we also look at the men who are further back, of course. They have gone through the first sprint checkpoint, but they're still some 9-10 kilometres behind the women at the moment, so the women should well finish first before the men can actually catch them. Back here with the men then through that first sprint checkpoint, and Eliasson taking up position at the moment. Who's with him in this group? He just looks absolutely imperious, doesn't he, all the time. Eliasson looks absolutely unruffled. He's a very, very polite, reserved figure as well. We always make that point about him. He's not someone, you know, you think he's dominating the competition. He looks odds on to win his second yellow bib this season back-to-back. just when you speak to him, very, very mild-mannered, doesn't really, there's no bravado about him, no arrogance by any means. But you look at, apart from the disappointment at Las Gambetta where he made that breakaway attempt on those loops and it didn't work, and then he faded a bit in the end. Look at his results, the next 4 races, 3 wins and a 2nd place. I think most people would take that.
Yeah, he's an interesting person. He's like so timid and so shy, when you talk to him, and you're like, not really making big fuss about himself, but once he's on a ski course on a track, he's a different kind of animal.
He's a tiger.
He's a tiger, yeah, indeed he is. We have the usual suspects here. We have Schulstad following him, and of course Jerdalen, the man with the sunglasses and always without a hat. Well, I guess when it gets really cold, he might have a hat.
Yeah, you see Andreas Neergaard here a little bit back. Do you think he must have had a problem in those first 10Ks? We cut that adrift 20 seconds back, especially the fact there was the sprint checkpoint there as well, which he continues to prioritise. Some of these guys in pursuit then.
Berdal over there, number 9. Berdal.
Yeah, these guys were only about 7-8 seconds adrift actually at that first 10-kilometre.
Here we can see that.
Point.
There's Resak actually pretty well placed there.
Well, he's been skiing better, hasn't he, Stan? I mean, been getting getting good races together actually. I mean, he had problems in the Marcialonga because he was looking in good shape, I thought, but I learnt later on talking to the team there a little bit, to Marek and Aleš as well at the Silvini Matsus team, that broke a couple of poles, not just one pole, but broke 2 poles in that race. Clearly, however well you're skiing, the look on your face, Tammy, you're just thinking, unlucky guy.
Yeah, and it's tough when you're double poling.
Yeah, but no, I mean, that affected his race. He still skied very, very well there, but he was very, very strong in Seefeld, a course that he really, really liked, that he knows that area well, trains a lot himself there, but as you say, well placed here as well. But I think he's one of the guys particularly probably looked at this course down to 32 and he was just thinking, it is what it is, I've got to deal with it, but he would have liked the original course clearly, because Rezach is a former yellow bib winner, a real master of his craft in long distance skiing.
Of course, he's one of the legends. He's not that young anymore, 41 or 42 years old at the moment, it's just like,
age is but a number.
It's just a number. I know that myself, being way over 40. But and also another one that we always talk about, Anders Aukland, 43, who's not here.
Yes, we haven't mentioned actually. If you're wondering, apologies for that. Actually, we didn't mention at the start the fact the Aukland brothers are not here, because those of you familiar, regular viewers of our coverage, will be wondering where the Santander boys, where those two are. Of course, they're extremely well represented. Jerdalen here, having a little look back. The man from Santander, they have a lot of quality. They have such strength in depth, but they don't have the Aukland brothers this weekend. And Magnan Dahlen, the team director, was mentioning that. We just presume, I guess, they were prioritising, you're saying, prioritising the March races, the remaining races in Scandinavia, particularly the Vasaloppet and the Birken as well. But the Santander boys, they've got some good younger guys coming through as well. We've seen Oyvind Fjeld as well doing work, setting up Neergaard for the sprints this season, and Snorri Einarsson as well. Younger guys as well who can take over the mantle, I guess, eventually from the Aukland brothers. That's got to be the plan for this team. More, of course, on Team Santander and the rest of the pro teams. If you're not familiar with what we're discussing here, you're new to Visma Ski Classics, vismaskiclassics.com, the place to go for that. And we mentioned the lake here at about 21 kilometers in, the Lago di Dobbiaco, or the Toblaka Se. Always go those Italian and German pronunciations, meanings for these parts of the course. It's where the women are now, because they just have over 11 kilometers to go. 21 kilometers in is the lake here at Dobbiaco. And they will head then towards, it's basically, I suppose this really, in many ways, could be where you make an attack, the tricky part of the course, this gradual uphill towards 25 Ks in the cemetery.
And you also notice that it just past the drinking station, and these elite skiers, they have their own service, but for the rest of the skiers, those are, and also for good ones, like myself, when I'm racing, those are important ones, those feeding stations organized by the event. And even if we tend to carry our own bottle, you know, but it's only a half a liter or so, so it's not going to take you far. So, but as you can see, these sometimes you see some of these elite skiers in some of the races actually carrying a bottle themselves as well. And in the Seefeld one, we saw that kind of action happening, and they were throwing them out, and they had those, you know, drinking belts as well. And Auckland brothers, speaking of them, you know, they took
Is
them.
Something you use? I mean, when you're out there, have you tried with the drinking belts a little bit as well?
Yes, I have to do that, you know, because of course I don't have a service team like they do, so I'm counting on, you know, my own drinks and also the drinks that are served, you know, at the you know, the regular drinking stations. So just like anyone else, it's pretty much the elite skiers that have their own. In a race like this, you know, it's easier because it's a short one, so you don't really. I mean, you need to drink, of course, you know, but it's not as pivotal, you know, in Vasaloppet or races like that.
Yeah, it's interesting the move these three women have made. I mean, now, frankly, with only, 10.7 kilometers to go of this race, you've got to say the winner's coming from one of these three. And frankly, this should be the podium as well. I mean, if they keep it together with the leads that they've got now. I mean, it was 20 seconds at that point. We've seen Smutner pull these advantages back in the past, but she's in that second group as it was with Astrid Slind and Sarah Lindborg as well. They were 20 seconds or so back, but the pace now these three are putting together, it'll be interesting to see whether they're increasing that advantage now as they head up gradually, this 5 kilometer gradual uphill, because they are moving towards the most southerly part of the course, down towards the war cemetery, the Cimitero di Guerra. In Italian, of course, it's Kriegerfriedhof in German. And they'll be down there, 25 kilometers in the high point in altitude. That's where the leading women are heading at the moment.
And earlier, we actually saw some interesting action with men, you know, when Eliasson is leading and seems to be leading all the way, but he actually kind of hopped aside and then looking at the others. He was, okay, is anyone else taking the lead? And he looked back and you know, just to, you know, find out where the peloton or the lead group is. But then no one seemed to be interested in taking the strings, you know. So he's the one controlling the race again, which seems to be kind of the case. You know, he's kind of used to that, you know, that he's the one who has to do all the work and then still, you know, win the races.
Nygaard there at the back of that chasing group. They cut the advantage a little bit, but I mean, this is the thing. They're still 8 kilometers so behind the women at the moment because of that huge head start, 30-minute head start, which is actually working very, very nicely. It's allowing us just to traverse across, look at different points of the race. And of course, you can follow the skiers as we focus on one race or the other. You saw there the official website. There is actually the live GPS tracking feature through VismaSkiClassics.com. That's not just exclusive to Teemu and myself in the commentary box or any of us here. We've opened that up. You can access that wherever you're watching the race, wherever in the world, through the website. If you want to see, because we naturally focus on one race or the other, you want to see what's going on in the other, GPS tracking is a good place to go. Eliasson just moving aside there for a moment, letting Yudalin do a bit of donkey work.
Yeah, that's exactly what I said earlier, that he wanted to do that earlier, but no one was interested. But now he's clearly made his point that, hey guys, someone else needs to do the work. Yeah.
I'll just take my position and wait for later on. But as you say, the familiar, the usual suspects: Dahl, Schulstad, Yudalin, Eliasson. This lead group of 4 at the moment. Just under 17 Ks to go. 15 gone at the moment for them, as they will eventually make their pass through the Nordic Arena here in a few kilometers' time, where we're positioned.
Yeah, I mentioned earlier that I spoke to Dahl at the airport, you know, on the way back to Finland. He was on the way back to Norway, of course, you know, and he was really happy with his team's result, you know, in Seefeld, and he was really confident. He wanted to go back to meet his family, but he seemed to be. He said he's in a good shape, and he was expecting a lot, you know, from this race. And of course, for him and for the others, you know, after this, it's a 3-week break, and everyone starts preparing for Vasaloppet, and I think that's what the Auckland brothers decided to do. Understand do that well in Seefeld, you know. Jürgen's been kind of solid, you know, but still we haven't seen him
not
peaking.
at what we've seen from him in the past.
No,
yeah,
so
you're right.
I guess they kind of figured that it's time to go back and just tweak them a little bit and get ready for Vasaloppet.
Tord Yudalin, though, is not taking a miss on this race. Of course, in very, very good form, the winner at the Marcialonga, and podium again another podium in Seefeld, and looking to just erode the gap a little bit more. You look at the overall standings, of course, Eliasson with 895 points overall in the yellow bib race. Yedal in second at the moment on 755, and Scholstad on 605, who's also in that group wearing 4 just behind him. So it's the usual suspects. It's tough, isn't it, for them to erode that gap of Eliasson's, and they reference that in the press conference because, of course, 200 for the winner, 170 for second. I mean, if you're doing that, you're only, they want more at this stage. They really want, you wouldn't wish it on anyone, but they want something to happen to Petter a little bit to make the race a bit more interesting, because it's going to be tough, isn't it? I mean, just the 3 races remaining, even if you do the math on that, you won all of them, overall, and he's second or third. It's going to be tough to erode that advantage at this stage, but it's how consistent he's been through the season.
You're right about that, and I'm pretty sure. I mean, of course, they're not going to admit it. No, you never should give up. But they pretty much given up at it.
Right, he could crash. He could break a pole. I mean, we don't wish that on anyone, but he's so consistent. This is the thing. We looked at his results. Last Gambetta. That's why it was such a surprise at the beginning of the season. He only ended 10th, because you look at him since then. The 3 wins, and the second is more what he's about.
But that was the first race, short one, very different from the others, So, but yeah, of course, it wasn't a good start for him. He was a little bit hesitant and a little bit, skeptical about his shape in December, But then everything changed, once we got to, the Iserskay, and ever since he's been strong, and his confidence is solid.
Yeah, interesting here that. Dahl has just dropped back a little bit from this group of 3 as they move through. I mentioned those standings, of course, through the app, through the website. You can see how everyone's doing overall, not just the yellow men's champion bib, but also in terms of the women's competition as well.
And here we have Bill Impola.
Yes,
it's been a while.
Chasing
I've
group.
really seen him, in a chasing action.
You know what I'm going to neglect to mention? But I always feel I should do it with him. We always talk about last season and that particular race. I'm going to leave it there because I start to feel a bit for Bill, because he's a tremendously talented guy. But as you say, he's due a better result, a bigger result, because he's been in around top 20, top 25 finishes. It's probably a bit better than that overall, and maybe this is the race he does a bit more. He's leading that chasing group at the moment, who are chasing these guys right now, as they look at some of the back markers here. Take a look back from the skidoo. Just that few seconds that's been opened up by the lead 3 to Jon Christian Dahl. Yeah, the skidoo drivers enjoy themselves on these stretches, I think. Good job.
Well, now it seems that it'll be these 2 again.
Yes, because we are now ticking into the second half of the race for the men, just over halfway. No, I just wonder with it a little bit whether these guys, Scholstad, Dahl and Yedalin, talking about that yellow bib race, not trying to knock Eliasson here, but maybe they'll try to make it a bit more interesting, whether they could possibly just push him out in the end, push him down to 4th, because it's still a great race from him, but then you just knock his points total down a little bit. Whether they can do it that way, they can bunch it up a little bit more. But he's shown his ability in the sprints as well. You think of in Seefeld, most notably last weekend, his sprinting quality, not something we ever really talked about in the past with Eliasson. He's very, very good at that as well.
Yeah, what they both of them actually said at the interviews, that this stadium area, let's call it that way, there was pretty of a gradual downhill. So it wasn't, like over here, we have more of a kind of a stadium type of sprint here. So we'll see. It's but yeah, I mean, he was pretty strong there, But then again, much longer, Yedalin, was much stronger.
The lead women we're back with, because they're actually reaching the high point in altitude in the race, about 1,300 meters above sea level, 25 kilometers in. And this is actually historically a very important part of this race, because it's the Haswan Mountain War Cemetery here overall. And it's a big part of history. About 100 years or so ago, when the Italian kingdom, as it was then, declared war on the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, and the Italian army occupied Cortina, and we had a kind of a diplomatic impasse at that point going on between them. A lot of fierce fighting actually here on the fronts of the Dolomites that went on. A lot of people killed in action between the 1920s and 1941. And the bodies of the soldiers were interred in other cemeteries around, but they were, a lot of them, after they were interred, were brought here actually to the war cemetery overall. So German-speaking Austrians were buried with other German speakers in the cemetery here. So soldiers of other nations belonging to the fallen monarchy, including other nationalities as well, Serbs, Yugoslavs, Slovenians, Hungarians, later rest here in the war cemetery. About 1,259 soldiers, we believe, buried in the cemetery. So we fill you in on a little bit of the history there. And the lead women are now at this point, the high point in altitude. And it is these three. It's great to see actually Misako Ishida there up with Britta Johansson Norgren and Sarina Bonner. Of course, Ishida, who missed Seefeld last weekend, but we mentioned the big race that happens in Norway, the Holmenkollen 30K, where she was top 10. She's taking that form back into the Ski Classics here, and we've seen her in Ski Classics do well in the past. The winner of La Diagonella last season, her debut season in Visma Ski Classics. And I think Henrik Kvissel, very, very pleased, the team director of Team United Bakeries, to have her back in the fold as well. Astrid Slind's been doing well, did brilliantly last weekend, but good to have two female skiers to run off each other week to week. And that's what we're seeing here from Ishida, putting in a very good performance for Kvissel's men, the United Bakeries outfit there.
And going back to that cemetery that you just talked about, it's also great about these races is that we have this historic, places of sites to see as well, and for these guys, of course, when you're racing, I know that you don't even pay attention to it. A little bit, you do a little bit, but you don't. After you've done the race like 10 times, you get to know the places. But of course, for the the big mass, it's a part of the beauty of it.
Yeah, they're coming up now towards where we are, the Nordic Arena. They're about a kilometre and a half away from the second sprint checkpoint. It's interesting with this sprint competition actually, because Nygaard, who won 8 of the 10 competitions so far, he isn't going to win either of them here overall in this race today. Not in the points in the first sprint checkpoint. He's not going to be in the points in the second either. Different names taking the points for their teams. They come past us, past our commentary position. The lead three, Eliasson has a little look back at the moment. Of course, Jidalen with him. And it's Jon Christian Dahl as well. And Johan Skjoldstad is actually the one who's now been cut a few seconds adrift of Dahl. Dahl was in that position a couple of kilometres back, but he's still within touch, of course. And they loop round here in the Nordic Arena in Toblach. Of course, this arena, famous part of the Tour de Ski competition in the FIS World Cup, and now part of the Visma Ski Classics as well. And they will finish here, of course, at 32 kilometres. But they're making their pass through. See Morten Edda Pedersen as well in the chasing group as well. They are, well, we'll see in terms of the timings in a moment, because we're getting them coming through to the second sprint checkpoint here, and it looks like Jidalen going to get maximum points for him. He wins the second sprint checkpoint, maximum 40 points for him and for Team Santander. Jon Christian Dahl just behind in second. We await confirmation. We've got Petter Eliasson in third there, just under a second back, and then it's Johan Skjoldstad now, about 10 seconds behind that lead group of three, and we await the fifth finisher. May well, it's not going to be more than Eddie Pedersen, actually looking at it now, coming up to it. Who's going to come through here? Who's going to win this out of these four guys? Coming through for the final 5 points that are on offer for fifth place, it is Stanislav Rezach. He's a regular figure in picking up sprint points. He picks up 5 points, not just for himself in the sprint standings, but also we say those points are carried forward as well for the blue team bib competition. So Silvini Matsus as well, that's 5 points for them. You never knock the points at the same time. So it's a kind of a double meaning, if you like, to the sprint standings. But it is Jidalen who's got the 40 points for Santander, with Team United Bakeries as well picking up 30 and 10 respectively. So they've basically kind of treaded water there through that second sprint stage. Both the two leading teams getting 40 each, nothing given really there, way of advantage to either.
And we see Daniel Rickardson in the 8th place, and which is pretty much the same as he was in the last one. He was finished 9th in SFL. Wasn't really too happy about it, so his team expected, and himself, they expected, that this could be a race that he is in the top 3, but not yet. It's been a tough season for him as well.
Yeah, Rickardson's been interesting because, of course, one of the really big names. Those of you maybe coming to Visma Ski Classics the first time, you would know about him because of his achievements in major championships. But I think he's very respectful. Asked him about it and said, "Are you a little bit surprised? You've been solid, but it hasn't quite happened big time. I think people were expecting podiums from you and everything." And he said, "Well, actually, in a way, I'm coming to long distance and everything, and these guys are showing that this is their, this is their living room, this is their home, and it's going to take time for me to adapt to that after what I've done, in the past in my career, in my previous career." So you see him in 8th at the moment, 33 seconds back, the very decorated Swede. But confirmation of those standings as they passed us through the Nordic Arena, making the pass through. They'll be back with us in 12 kilometres time to finish the race. But as you said, familiar suspects. Bill Impula there, we mentioned, a minute and 11 seconds back, just dropping back a touch, didn't he? And Andres Niergaard, disappointing race from him at the moment, way down the standings still.
I also wonder about Jürgen Brink. He was 21st here, about almost 2 minutes behind, one minute and something. It'll be interesting to see if he's going to be up there, from us a little bit. He's known to be a skier who really knows how to tweak yourself for that. But we'll see. So far it hasn't really been a good season for him.
Yeah, and just take a look at the updated sprint standings. No change really at the head of things because neither Andres Niergaard or Marcus Ottersen scored any points in that second sprint stage. And there are the updated preliminary standings in the team competition, as I say, through that sprint stage. We've basically got a similar position here through the first 2 sprint stages, the points on offer, because Santander had a 598-point lead on United Bakeries, and that's where they are at the moment. But of course we have the 2 best male finishers and the female as well, the lead female finisher. Their points are carried forward as well, so that's going to be a big part of things, seeing how they finish up, because you look at the women's race and actually there's opportunity there for United Bakeries potentially to make a few points in, with Ishida leading Smutner at the moment, and then we'll see how the men's race actually eventually pans out with the points on offer there as well. We're back with the women. They're not far actually from us now. They're only just over 5 kilometres away, 27 kilometres in, as they've looped around past the war cemetery that they featured, and now basically it's just Tamu. It's this gradual downhill, really nice, easy downhill, pretty much towards the finish where we are in the Nordic Arena in Toblach.
Yes, it's not gonna take long for them to come here. It'll be a tough finish.
Yeah, who do you fancy at this stage, actually? I mean, with this gradual downhill, the course profile as it is, where they are, the winner, the podium is set now. These 3 are going to be on the podium. We don't know the order. But who's your money on a little bit here? Who are you fancying? Tough, isn't it?
It is tough, and it is tough, But then again, Ishida could be the one. She's, she's been really hungry, in this race. So, well, I'd say her, but you never know. I mean, it's
you're not thanking me for the question, are you? With 5K to go.
Yeah, it's tough. Whenever it gets to a sprint, it's always tough. It's interesting for the spectators. When you have all the skiers coming to the finish together, but it's really hard to predict.
Yeah, no, Ishida's interesting. I suppose you'd probably go Norgren overall. I mean, we saw it at the Marcialonga, her abilities at the end to hold off Smutner there, but I don't know. No, it's very, very tough to see with that women's race, but the podium is set. I think it's going to be those 3, and it's just the order that they finish up with, and crucially, who's going to win the race.
And sprinting in Marcialonga is very different, because you have a 2.5k uphill just behind you, but over here you have this easy part. You can recover, from the climb, and you just get to the stadium area, and whoever is the fastest, whoever has the ability to have a really fast tempo double poling in the final stretch.
Yeah. Well, we'll wait and see on that one on the women, because they'll be with us very, very soon. Just a few kilometres to go for them as we look out over the open water. Completely frozen over, of course, there. And the surrounds here are the Dolomites, the Northern Dolomites. We don't tire of showing you these pictures because it really is, well, it's a historic part of the world, UNESCO World Heritage Site, all of this. And it's a part of things with the Marcialonga, but really in the first part of the race you see them to the side when you go up the Val di Fassa, but really that race is about the Val di Fiemme, which has great history in itself, of course. This race really, though, is in a big way about the Dolomites because it is set absolutely within them. Actually just taking a look out as we take a look overhead, we're looking back here in the Nordic Arena, some of the other men who are coming through 20 kilometres at the moment. The sun breaking through, blue sky overhead. It's quite a day, isn't it, at the moment, weather-wise. One of the better days of the season, actually, for weather. You just see it on your shots, actually. Some of the sun, rays of sunshine coming through as well. Very nice to see. Just over 4 kilometres to go then in the women's race. Norgren, Ishida and Bonner. The winner will come from one of these three. Who's it going to be at the moment? Of course, Norgren, the standout figure of this Visma Ski Classic season, wearing the yellow bib. Tough race last weekend in Seefeld, a course profile which didn't really suit her double poling, but here, back to business for the Swede, who signed for the Lager 157 ski team last summer, was with Ski Pro-Am. But the move to the Lager 157 team really does seem to have benefited her, the opportunity to train with the guys there that she's talked about. Did win, of course, her first stage at the König Ludwiglauf while still racing for Ski Pro-Am last season, so they were a big part in her development, but she really has kicked on, and it's shown in the results since moving to that team that Anton Jörnberg runs, and Jürgen Brink, of course, is a big figure in that team. A lot of quality there. We talked about Marcus Ottosson and what he's done in the sprint competition in the men's standings this season, but Norgren a regular source of points for the Lager 157 team overall. 2 years of age now, actually, Norgren, of course, with the hat-trick of victories, the 3 consecutive wins in a row that she got at the Jezerska in the Czech Republic, then in Switzerland at La Diagonella, and then the win at the Marcialonga as well. That's, for me, personally, my highlight of the season so far, that sprint finish with Katarina Smutner down into Cavallese. Do you go with that, Teemu? I mean, you've commentated most of the races this season, together. We've been at one or the other, actually, through these first 6 stops as it is. I mean, that's got to be, maybe we'll get a better point today, because we've got sprint finishes in prospect here in Toblach, but no, that was thrilling, wasn't it, the Marcialonga?
It always is,
race.
Because of that, that final hill, it's like Jedalen said in the interview, there's something magical about that, race and that place, and no other race. I mean, Seefeld was a tough one, of course, but no other race has a finish like that where you have to climb up, 2.5 kilometers in a you pretty much, just double poling, and at least these guys do. And then you have this really short finish, and these quite often, believe it or not, it's a sprint finish, in that race between, some of the men and this time also with women as well.
Yeah, no, you mentioned the men's race a lot. I dwell on the women's because it was particularly exciting because, of course, in the men's race in Cavallese, it was these two who were featured, along with Stian Hurlegard as well, who ended up third on the podium. He had that just edged out by Eliasson, but it was really that move, again, similar to 12 months prior, where Jedalen made that move, 750 meters to go. And Eliasson, for once, couldn't really live with him. It was just a brilliant turn of speed, of pace from Jedalen. See whether anyone looks in that men's race, those lead two, whether they look to steal a march on the other as we go on with that one. But we're back with the women because they haven't got very long to go at all. They'll be with us in the Nordic Arena where we are at the moment. Some of the back markers in the men's race are coming through, but not too long from now, the elite women, the lead women, will be coming here into the Nordic Arena in Toblach, in Dobbiaco. And we await this sprint finish in the women's race between these three. It's coming up to an hour and a half. We thought this was going to be the likely sort of time. And they're really looking to up the intensity now. Bonner and Norgren and Ishida here. Just make that little downhill push. It is largely downhill here. You saw that little climb. It wasn't really a massive climb. Now they're on the downhill because it is a gradual downhill. The drop in altitude because they're at the War Cemetery. That was 1,300 meters above sea level. They finish up actually back here. Actually, it's a similar altitude point to Imbrias in Prague's, about just over 1,200 meters above sea level, and they're coming now into the arena. These three, the winner's going to come from this. They're going to come past our commentary position very soon. Norgren and Bonner and Ishida, and they're coming through to the finish point now here in the Nordic Arena, and it looks like Norgren's got it, and she has got it. She gets the winner's garland. It is her 4th win of this Visma Ski Classic season for Britta Johansson Norgren of the Lager 157 ski team. She further cements her grip on the yellow champion bib. She wins that sprint with Misako Ishida, who gave everything, of course, for the Team United Bakeries, and Sarina Bonner of Team X-Spirit. Bonner, of course, as always, the ultimate sportswoman, acknowledging Norgren and her efforts there to win that sprint finish. Very quick, sharp ending to that women's race. Just winning it in the end there. And in terms of the second group of women who've come through, of course, Katarina Smutner in there. She's lost further ground to Britta Johansson Norgren, and we await the confirmed finish. It's actually very important for her that she doesn't lose too much ground here. It's 4th at best. She's there, of course, with Astrid Slint and with Sora Limborg as well. We await the numbers here. This is the finish to the women's race. Really did jump up on us, and Norgren, as we kind of expected, that quality, that sprinting quality in the end, getting ahead of Bonner and Ishida. Take the win here at the Black Dobbiaco Cortina race. First edition, of course, of this in the Visma Ski Classics. It has been a race for many years, 39th edition, but the first time it's been under the Visma Ski Classics umbrella. And those are your top 6 finishers now. Confirmed that Lindborg got 4th place, and Katarina Smutner down in 5th on our timings. And Astrid Slint of Team United Bakeries in 6th. And we now have as well another finisher. It's Annika Löfström, who is 7th overall, a little way back from those, because we had those first 3 in that very, very tight finish that Norgren took, and then the next 3 were 3/4 of a minute back, 45 seconds back, and then it was Löfström further back still. We'll confirm those standings for you, but that is how it is. Norgren with the win, and Bonner in 2nd, Ishida 3rd. That's your podium for this race here, 7th stage of the Visma Ski Classics. So the women are finished. We will, of course, Teemu Virtanen has made his way down, actually. He's going to be looking to get a word with them. We'll play some of those interviews out to you later on. Back, though, with the men, who are not too far behind now, as it is, and it's familiar figures at the head of the race, as we've been mentioning. Tord Jedalen of Team Santander, and Petter Eliasson of Team Lis Blanco, the man wearing the yellow bib. We talked about Britta Johansson Norgren having a firm grip, firm hold on that yellow champion bib. Same with Eliasson. And he's effectively going to hopefully look to extend his lead here. He has a 140-point lead over Tord Jedalen at the moment. So realistically, it's looking like we can have a 30-point swing either way. Just over 7 to go now. They now are now pretty much at the war cemetery point that we were filling you in on the history of it earlier. The high point in altitude of this 32-kilometer classic technique course, 1,318 meters above sea level. Just under 7 kilometers to go, and Jedalen and Eliasson have moved clear. They've made that move. They seem to have lost the United Bakery skiers, Johan Kjellstad and Jon Christian Dahl, a little way back now. Looked at the point actually at 20 kilometers into the race, and Dahl was right up with them. Kjellstad was only 10 seconds back. But now these two have really started to pull clear since that 20-kilometer point. Really over the last 5 kilometers or so, they've made their move. That's what we thought may well happen, actually, over this 5-kilometer gradual uphill. It's these two who've made that move on Dahl and Kjellstad, and the rest of the field pulling clear. They are now going to be 1st and 2nd realistically, but in which order does matter for the yellow bib, because it could be Eliasson here extending his lead to 170 points over Yadalin, or you look at it the other way, it could be back to 110. And it sets things up, doesn't it, intriguingly for those 3 remaining races. The Scandinavian races, of course, in the Visma Ski Classics season, the world-famous Vasaloppet, first weekend, first Sunday of March, which will be our next stop after here in Dobbiaco, after a 3-week break, which I think everyone, teams included, looking forward to after these 4 consecutive race weekends. The 3-week break, then the Vasaloppet, then the weekend, not the weekend after that, but a couple of weekends after that, we have the Birkebeiner-Rennet as well in Reina to Lillehammer in Norway. Very famous race, of course, that Eliasson won. Eliasson won the last 4 races of last season. He won the Vasaloppet, the Birken, after the König Ludwig Lauf, and then won the Orefjellsloppet as well. Totally dominating the second half of the last Ski Classic season. And he's been similar this time, but Yadalin is really keeping with him. He's been very impressive himself, the win over Eliasson in the Marcialonga. Young Christian Dahl is trying to keep up with them. Now on his own in 3rd spot. The leaders with just over 6 kilometers to go now, Eliasson and Yadalin. But there is that possibility, as I say, 140 points between them at the moment. Possibility of it going to 170 in Eliasson's favour. Down to 110. More on those standings, of course, and all the best of the interviews as well with the professionals, with the elite athletes, to be found on vismaskiclassics.com. Find out more about those standings, how all the points work as well, because there's a lot to get your teeth into, to get to grips with if you're new to how this works. Familiarities, if you look at professional cycling, how the Grand Tours work, if you're coming from other sports, some familiarities of the way this has been set up by the team in terms of the points scoring and the team competition, to how professional cycling works. If you're not familiar with all of that, for instance, you can find out how everything operates, all the rules and everything available on the official website, vismaskiclassics.com. Just going to be able to pull clear of the other here, or is it going to be Eliasson and Yadalin right the way through to the finish line here in the Nordic Arena in Dobbiaco? Another sprint finish in prospect between them. Instructions being shouted out here from one of the service team members. 5.5 to go now as they make their way through this gradual downhill, because they've reached they've gone past the high point in the race, and they make their gradual downhill. You see Dahl trying to keep up with them. He's kind of on his own now in 3rd spot, the Norwegian. Of course, the winner of La Scambeda opening weekend of the season, that was back start of our calendar, first weekend of December. We started in Livigno in northern Italy. We actually have 4 races in northern Italy in the calendar, 3 weekends. But of course, the double header that we started with that team time trial, and then the last Scambeda that he won. But Dahl in 3rd spot at the moment, but he's been cut adrift really by Eliasson and Yadalin. We're back with them, we're focusing on them. Just over 5 kilometers to go, and well, we could have another really tight finishing prospect between these two.
Yeah, it always seems to be these two, pretty much. Except the last one, is a bit different. But, yes, it's a tight race again, just like with women.
Yeah, 30-second lead now. Dahl was actually with them at 20 kilometers where they were with us in the Nordic Arena. But since then, those two have gone clear of him, and Scholstad actually further back still. So it's a bit more drawn out. We were maybe expecting a few more to be at the head of the race by this point, but it is just these two, the 2 standout performers in the men's race of this Visma Ski Classics season. I was mentioning, Teemu, that to the viewers, that this is actually important here, because 140 points the lead overall, but you've got a difference between 170 and 110. 110, if Yadalin can get the nod here to the 3 remaining races, just maybe feels there's still possibility here heading to March.
Certainly.
I mean, it's still a big gap, particularly Eliasson always appears to be in the podium, that's the thing, but it's going to be difficult for him. But yeah, if you can nip it back to 110 with 3 to go, 3 races to go, who knows?
But I'm pretty sure, Dahl is really happy, as I said, he felt confident, and he seemed to have a bit of a problem there, early in the race, when when Sköldal and these guys were, you know, ahead of him, you know, he wasn't able to keep the pace, you know, but it seems that he recovered. Because that's kind of interesting, that what happens in these races, that sometimes you might feel a little bit, you know, you might feel tired or something's going on with you, but you can then pick up the pace, and particularly the long ones, something like that happens. You go through different kind of emotions and different kind of feelings throughout the race. Now they're looking back and seeing how far they're
not going to get caught at this stage. Not 4 to go, 4 kilometres to go. The winner's coming from these two, and that's why we're focusing on them. We will, as promised, bring you when we're done with this. We'll bring you some of the best of the interviews with the women's race, of course, that featured the end of Teemu. Slightly out of breath from coming back, hot-footing it up from the mix zone, which is just beneath our commentary position in the Nordic arena.
Yeah, there's quite a lot of running.
Yeah, the training's going well, is it, Teemu, for the 24-hour? No, you just come up from that, and we'll, when we get a convenient point, we'll hear from the interviews that you just carried out with Britta Johansson Norgren and Sarina Bonner and Misako Ishida as well, the top 3 in the women's race. But at the moment, naturally, we want to feature the end of the men's race. The live pictures here, now under 4 kilometres to go. You can see here, actually, Jon Christian Dahl has just cut the gap a little bit. He's upping the pace. Now 16 seconds between him and the lead 2. They're looking back, actually. Edison just had a little look back towards Dahl, who we know about his sprinting quality. We know about this guy. He's very powerful. And we looked at him actually as a potential winner of this race. Just wonder whether...
And he's looking back as well, you know.
Yeah.
I'm sure that...
Well, both him and Johan... I don't know where actually at the moment Johan Skjoldstad actually is, but I mean, both of them are very, very good sprinters overall. So Jadalen and Eliasson will be mindful of that, the United Bakeries boys. Just want to keep them in the distance. Won't want them up, won't want Dahl particularly up with them coming into the finish in the arena.
Something I could ask these guys, you know, because they seem to be doing this a lot, you know, these two. So how, because they're from different teams. So are they kind of molding to be a kind of a team here, you know, because, you know, that they always these two guys, you know, so how well do they actually work together coming from different teams, you know, because this is not the first time that they are coming to the finish line and facing each other.
Yeah, it's kind of familiar, isn't it? They're a familiar meeting between them, because they will be in the arena, of course, together. And we've had the Cascata climb, the Marcialonga, where Eliasson fell victim to that brilliant push from Jadalen. But then, of course, we look at last weekend where Jadalen was in, and he was the one who faded, and Eliasson was the one who took the win, and Jadalen ended up 3rd. So it's been differing results. They've, as you say, they've been involved with 5 kilometres, 4 kilometres to go of races at the business end of the race, but which way is this one going to turn out? This first time that the Dobbiaco Cortina race has been in the Visma Ski Classics, and it's been very interesting, this 32-kilometre course. Been pretty quick, actually. Look at the women's race, actually, how it ended up. Pretty fast, the final few kilometres, and the men's race as well. We mentioned that, you know, the snow that fell overnight maybe slowed things down for the women early on, but the men here actually have kept a pretty good pace throughout. 2.8 kilometres to go between Jadalen and Eliasson for what looks like to be the race victory, unless Jon Christian Dahl can produce something pretty spectacular.
And I said it's going to be about an hour and 15 minutes, and we're getting kind of close there in the, you know, the final time.
That's nice and sharp, this race. I mentioned this gradual downhill that they've got now in these final 6 or 7 kilometres. There is Dahl in hot pursuit. Team United Bakeries, man, they're trying to, of course, bridge the huge disadvantage to Team Santander. Jadalen will be picking up more points, but we look at Dahl and Skjoldstad, and they will be the top 2 finishers. They'll be looking to just gain a little bit of ground, because they've done it in the women's race with Ishida's brilliant ski for 3rd, with Smutner down in 5th. So a little bit of ground made up there, and maybe they can make up a bit more ground here overall, even if the man from Santander gets the highest finish. It isn't all to do with that. It's the 2 male finishes, best male finishes. So maybe United Bakeries can do a bit more there.
You see how they're going to looking back, you know, just to find out where Dahl is, you know, constantly looking back. But actually, they increased the gap, you know. Now it's 21 seconds. It was 16 seconds before.
Yeah,
but they obviously concerned. They'll be concerned about. I think you know, you can look at the track. You know, it looks you know, much faster here. You know, and that's what the girls said. You know, the one who was pondering about the conditions, that it was a bit slow because of the new snow in the beginning of the race.
Don't give away too much.
I won't, but I just mentioned that because you see that when they going down this part, this is really fast. They're going downhill. The track seems to be a bit of icing up a little bit, so it's a really fast downhill part. So these distance, these kilometers will go really fast.
Here we are then, just under 2 kilometers to go then in the men's race for the Toblach Dobbiaco Cortina 32-kilometer classic technique course, and familiar names at the head of things. Petter Eliasson of Team Lease Blanco, winner of course of multiple stage victories this season, holding yellow and deservedly holding yellow. And Tord Jedalen here as well with him, and they're both really pushing hard now. Who's going to get this as it comes to a conclusion? It is the sprint finish. It looks Eliasson who's the stronger here overall.
All right.
Does he have it, or is Jedalen now just coming up behind him, taking position tactically here? Thrilling conclusion as they come through the final downhill stretch. They're past us now, past the commentary position, down the far side, and they'll loop round now to the finish line.
But Jedalen has really fast skis.
Yeah, he has.
Look at that. Look at that.
Does seem to have a bit of better glide, doesn't he, on that little downhill stretch? And they now come around the corner here in the Nordic Arena in Toblach. Excellent conclusion. The two leading figures in the men's competition in the Visma Ski Classics this season. And they're now in the final stretch, and it looks like it's Jedalen who's got the beating of Eliasson.
He's the one.
Here. He looks better, doesn't he? He looks stronger, and he looks to have this in the bag. The winner of the Marcialonga, who got the better of Eliasson there, and he's got the better of him again today.
He did it again.
Jedalen with the brilliant finish, and he has got a second win of the season, and he's beaten Petter Eliasson there in a thrilling conclusion to the Toblach Dobbiaco Cortina. Very interesting as well for the yellow bib, because it does reduce the gap. Eliasson's advantage now to 110 points. We meanwhile have Jon Christian Dahl, who couldn't quite keep up with them despite his best efforts. Third place on the podium for Dahl. Almost 27 seconds back, 26.6 seconds back. The Norwegian, the man from Team United Bakeries. That's going to be your podium. The big news that Tord Jedalen, second win of the season for him, just edging out Petter Eliasson with Jon Christian Dahl in third. And now some of the others will be coming through in the men's race.
Und dann Daniel Rickardsson, letzte 100 Meter, Rezac, Höst, Rickardsson für Platz 4, 5 und 6 und Höst ist schnell.
Here are some of the others, and this is a fantastic finish here. Look at the other positions, and we've got Anders Hoss there in fourth. We didn't mention him too much in the race, but that's a great result for the young man from Team Lease Blanco, getting some points back in the battle for the pink youth bib on his teammate Stian Ødegaard. Stanislav Rezac, another good result for the experienced Czech, the former yellow bib winner. Rezac with fifth place overall, just losing out in the sprint with Hoss. Daniel Rickardsson, another solid ski from the Swede for Team Expert at 6th overall. Morten Pedersen faded a bit as it went on, but he actually has 7th overall, which is a great result for him. Johan Skjoldstad certainly did fade because he was in touch with the leaders at 20 kilometers to go, but struggled there as it went on. And now some of the other finishers as well in the top 15, the likes of Kjetil Dahmen for Team Lease Blanco in 12th spot. All of these guys now coming through into the Nordic Arena on that final bend as they come around right by our commentary position to finish up the finish line. Just a few more of them coming through now, including here Torbjørn Bedal. Looks to be just winning the push here overall with Bill Impola. So Bedal with a top 15 finish. Impola just edged out there in the end, having to make do with 16th spot. It's a fantastic setting, this actually, the Nordic Arena in Toblach. Great conclusion, finish point to the race. Of course, we would love to have finished in the town centre in Cortina d'Ampezzo. But as a make-do finish point, this is pretty good as well. A lot of history behind the Nordic Arena here in Toblach. And Andreas Nygaard with a strong finish. He's inside the top 20. So they're finishing up here. Meanwhile, though, we did mention the winners, the top 3 in the men's race. Let's hear from Teemu Virtanen now, who's speaking to some of the top finishers in the men's race here.
Congratulations. Tough race again, but much shorter than last weekend. How well did you recover for this, and did you know that this will be the sprint finish?
Actually, it wasn't a sprint finish. It was a really hard race. Petter Jassen, he was, he's a really tough skier, so he's starting to go fast really early on the race today. So, yeah, you can see the sprinters, they didn't make the keep following. So, he was really strong.
So sometimes a short race could be even harder than a long one.
Yeah, when I came from the World Cup, it was the 50 kilometer was the hardest, then the sprint races. So it's not the length, that's the speed that kills you.
And of course, we have 3 weeks before Vasaloppet. Now you're winner of this and also Marcialonga. Will you claim the victory there as well?
Oh, that's 3 times as long, and he has many kilometers to make me soft. So we'll see.
All right, congratulations and see you there.
Thank you.
Congratulations, tough race once again, and a sprint finish with him again. We were wondering about you guys. How much do you work together? You're on different teams, but it seems that always you two.
Today we're trying to cooperate and take the lead, both taking the lead and getting behind. So yeah, it was a fair race, I think.
Well, he said that you actually started really fast, and sometimes shorter races are harder than the long ones. How did you feel?
Yeah, I tried to push hard all the way, but that was the plan and tactic.
And it worked pretty well, but of course the Vasaloppet is the next one, 3 weeks to go. How can you prepare for this, for that one?
Well, we have a training camp in 1 week on Sjusjøen in Norway, so that will be the training period before Vasaloppet. So it's not so long time, but hopefully we can keep the shape good still.
Certainly you will, and see you there. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
All right, nice to see you here on the podium. We actually met at the airport, and you said you felt pretty confident and happy with the Seefeld. Were you happy with this one?
Yeah, of course, it's my best result on this side of Christmas, or the New Year, and it's a long time since I've been on the podium. I didn't have the last power to be in the first group, but for myself it was a really big step forward, yes.
And it seemed that those guys, and particularly Eliassen, started really fast, correct?
Yeah, it was a hard pace from the start, and I just tried to stay in and not get in the red zone too much, and I have to give some in the World Cup slope here, and I hope to get the gap in the end, but they worked good together, and they made it in the finish, so yeah.
And how well were you recovered from last year's tough race?
Well,
last week?
I've been very tired, and actually I have 2 days of sickness. So I was very unsure today, but I have tried to train not much and just have lots of recovery, and I think it was a good day for me.
And of course, since I asked those 2 guys about the Vasaloppet and you are the winner from 2014, how are you going to prepare for that one?
Well, I'm happy that my shape is getting better, and now we have 3 weeks to Vasaloppet. I will train good and much, and I hope my shape will get even better. I need it if I will have a chance to win. So these guys are very hard. So, but I think it's going the right direction for Vasaloppet now.
So basically, just keeping up with those 2 guys.
Yeah, they have a great capacity, and but on those flat courses, I think I have more advantage for me. So Vasaloppet will suit me better, I think.
All right, and see you there, and hopefully I'll see you on the podium again.
I hope so. Thank you.
So there we go then, Teemu Virtanen speaking to the podium finishers, and you saw there the finish, the real turn of speed, a kick from Tord Dalen to win this Toblak Dobbiaco Cortina 32-kilometre race. First time it's been part of the Visma Ski Classics, and a thrilling finish to it in the men's race. Just getting the better there of Petter Eliasson for the second time this season. Also beat him in the Marcia Longa. Those two, the first two, and then we also heard the thoughts of Jon Christian Dahl as well. Back on the podium, of course, the winner of La Scambeda, but not since then. Pleased with that. Great ski as well, it has to be said, from Anders Host of Team Lisplan Go to finish up fourth. You can see the ground that he's making up in the battle for the pink bib as well. Christian Ødegaard down the field today. Great ski from Stanislav Rezac, the Czech, the experienced Czech, in fifth, and some of the other finishers as well in that top 10. Familiar names. Johan Scholstad there as well in the top 10. As we look down the field, Ødegaard, we maybe expected a bit more from him. I mentioned not in the sprint points for either of the sprint standings. I think he's 17th overall. Maybe could have done a bit more on this course. Don't really know what happened there as such with him, with the man from Team Santander, and then some of the others as well who've finished the race some 5-6 minutes behind there, the likes of Jiri Pliška from the Silvini Madsus team. So there we go then. This the men's race, as we mentioned, Jon Christian Dahl pleased to be back on the podium. First time since Italy started the season, of course, so well. Said that he was sick for a couple of days as well, which clearly isn't ideal preparation, but managed to get it together. Petter Eliasson, Tammy, you've just been speaking to them. Interesting there, you know, to hear their thoughts. And Eliasson didn't seem too disappointed overall with the second spot.
Well, you know, it's, you know, his dear opponent again, you know, it's Dahlin. So he has lost to him before, you know. It's always a tough fight between these two, and as they both said, you know, it's sometimes a shorter race like this could be even harder and tougher, you know, and it seemed to be the case in this one, you know. Eliasson started really fast, you know, and these guys were struggling, you know, but it's hard to, you know, and he was able to, you know, keep up. He's a really good tailgater, so to speak, you know, and he's shown his strength, you know. He's a really tough one to break away from.
Yeah, Dahlin, very, very good. So, of course, the men, we've heard from them. We've seen how they did. Recap that. Let's look a little bit back at the women, because they finished a fair while ago now. Of course, Britta Johansson Nordgren, the winner there, just ahead of Sarina Bonner and Misako Ishida. And we're going to hear from them now. Tammy, you spoke to them a little bit earlier. Let's hear from the podium finishers now in the women's race. We are going to hear from the women. We're just going to show you, first of all, how they finished up, actually. First of all, Misako Ishida back on the podium in Visma Ski Classics. Third spot for her. Very, very strong ski from her. I think Henrik Kvissel and the team will be pleased with what she put together. A few points gained on Katarina Smutner as well in that standing. More importantly for herself, actually, a podium. Sarina Bonner, another strong ski from her. Of course, the winner of the inaugural Kaiser Maximilian Lauf last weekend in Seefeld. We said that this course actually wouldn't favour us so much, but still in the end, very, very strong, very, very confident. But in the end, both Ishida and Bonner outpaced. In the end, a great turn of pace. I mentioned this might be the ending to the race. Britta Johansson Nordgren extremely strong in that final stretch here in the Nordic Arena to take what is her fourth victory of this Visma Ski Classic season. Let's hear from the podium finishers now in the women's race.
All right, congratulations. Once again, you're here as a winner. Last weekend was a tough one, of course, you know, but now you recovered.
Yeah, I felt a little bit better today, so it was good.
How was the race? Much shorter than last weekend and much shorter than these races should be. But what kind of a pace did you girls study with?
It was kind of slow in the snow today, so I didn't think we have so much speed. But it was when we came here to the hills, Sarina helped me and we get a gap to the others, so then we just had to go fast.
And how much did you girls work together? We're looking at Gaia and I, looking at you, and it seemed to me that you worked a little bit together.
Yeah, I think we're every one of us want to be on the podium, so we helped each other to have the other behind.
And by the time you got here, were you confident that you will take it? Yeah, your sprinting ability is strong enough?
No, you can never be sure. I think I'm like sprint finish a little bit better than the others, but you can never be sure, and it's just try to take it.
All right, thank you very much, and see you in Vasaloppet.
Thank you.
It was a tough race, of course, you know, shorter one the last weekend, you won. How well did you recover from the long one?
Well, I recovered pretty good. It was other kind of muscles I used today. It was double pulling and a bit shorter, so I felt good. But it was just, Britta was too strong at the end.
Your double pulling seemed to be really strong, you know, when I was commentating and looking at you. Are you now really confident with your double pulling technique?
Well, it always goes better than I think, kind of. I was a bit nervous yesterday, and I have to say sorry to my waxers because I was suddenly nervous, and it was like I need some skis for striding as well. But in the morning when it was with the new snow, it was no question, and it was just double pulling. And in the hills, I feel good, and today, I felt good in double pulling also.
All right, and now the Vasaloppet is next, so good luck there, and we'll see you there.
Thank you. See you.
Congratulations, tough race. How did it go for you?
Today, my ski, our team works working so hard, and I can get very good ski. So, I could follow them. I'm really happy. And today is slightly uphill many place, and this is quite fit to me. So then I could get.
And were you happy with the distance? It was a bit shorter than usually.
Yes. But still hard. Last is hard, every time,
And then the Vasaloppet is next. How you prepare for that?
Vasaloppet is quite long, so just I try to more longer hours, try to make more hours, I try to get more long distance endurance power. Yep.
Thank you very much, and see you there.
Yeah, thank you.
Thoughts there of the podium finishers in the women's race. Masako Ishida there alongside Sorana Bonner, and of course the winner of the women's race, Britta Johansson-Norgren. We await the flower ceremony, which is actually just being set up at the moment. It gives us a chance actually just to reflect on a couple of those comments, Tammy. You carried out those interviews. Anything stand out for you in particular in terms of 6 interviews that you did across both the men's and the women's race? Key things that you take away from it?
Well, in Serena's case, it's still interesting to see that she's still a little bit hesitant, you know, in terms of the double pulling versus classical diagonal striding. As I said, she did really well today, and her double pulling seemed really good. So she should just be more confident and just go for it. And the men's side, we keep talking about the distances, but sometimes it's great to have short ones as well, because it's a tough race. When you do 30K, we talked about it earlier, and the athletes seem to agree. It's tough to do 30K because it's a hard race. It's a full speed all the way through. And it seemed to me that everyone's pretty happy that it was a little bit shorter race, because now we have time. Oh yeah, exactly. That's it's not just the elite skiers taking everything out.
Indeed.
It's now they have a 3-week break to prepare for Vasaloppet, which is so much longer. So this was probably a really good preparation for them to get something like this after a long tough race last weekend. So. And Dahl was really happy to be on the podium again. He said, this is his best race since the the beginning when he won.
Gambetta that we commentated together, it seems a while ago, doesn't it? Already beginning of December in Livigno. So he obviously likes Italy at the moment this season, because good result from him there at the podium. As we take a look actually at we always make the point about the amateurs, some of them coming through now through the Nordic arena. And the various images, it's part of what this competition is all about. It's not all about the elites, it's also the opportunity for the amateurs to ski the same race, to ski alongside some of the very best in the sport. And that's what these guys are privileged to be able to do. A beautiful day here in the southern Tyrol, here in Trento, depending on how you look at it, German, Italian. All the heritage, of course, of this part of the world, and great atmosphere around here as well as we build towards the start of lunchtime, 11:30 local time at the moment. We still await, by the way, the flower ceremony. That's still being set up at the moment, but we will with that, of course, as soon as we're ready to go with that. No, I mean, it was interesting as well, just reflecting back on the elite finishes. Just that also, Britta Johansson-Norgren talking about that, about a point you were making in the commentary, and she was backing it up, helping each other, working together, even when you're not on the same team, to get through the race and get a good position. That's interesting that, they're admitting that is actually going on here.
Yeah, and the same with the Jedal and Eliasson as well, you know, from different teams, but still working together. You have to, in these races, you have to. It's not just always your teammates, you know, supporting you, particularly with these elite ones, you know, the top of the top, you know, and they have to work together. They know each other, and pretty quickly they also learn each other's, you know, weaknesses and strengths as well, you know. So it's something that you have to do, because you always have to remember that you have the chasing pack, you know, have the you know, peloton behind you, and like in this case, these girls wanted to make sure that they're not going to catch up.
Just taking another look back here at the end to the women's race overall, and confirmation of those standings. We've been discussing it a bit, the podium. I suppose actually looking at this, Tammy, a chance to pick out some of the other names as well here. I mean, good skis put together. Overall, you look at Astrid Slind, another good result for her as well. And even actually, I'd make a word here for Christina Roberto. I mean, she struggled a bit in the end, 3.5 minutes back, but she's had some problems with injuries actually with her Achilles at the moment. So it's good for her to complete another race overall from the skistart.com team.
And for Smutna, Katarina Smutna, it was she was still okay, you know, 46 seconds behind, you know, the winner, but still not the strongest race. So obviously she's not, you know, that satisfied, but you know, still in the second place in the overall.
Here we are then with the trophy presentation. Overall winner Britta Johansson Norgren holding on to the yellow bib. You just saw the standings actually extending her lead overall. Now 120. It's in fact more than that, isn't it? Overall, it was 90 points, but it's increased because she won the race, and of course Smutna was outside of the podium on this occasion. So Norgren looking very good to win the yellow bib for the first time. It has to be said with just 3 races remaining. Particularly with the Vasaloppet to come, where you imagine she's going to be a real force as well, with what she brings to the track, brings to the occasion.
Certainly she will. Really strong double pole, and that, of course, suits her perfectly.
Yeah, she's looking extremely strong. That's 4 stage wins now this season. Of course, got the hat-trick. Struggled a bit more in Seefeld last weekend, but back to winning ways, back to the top of the podium.
Number 2. From Switzerland and Team Expirit, Serena Bonner.
Second place then, following up the maiden victory of the season. She has 13 career Visma Ski Classic stage victories, more than anyone else. Serena Bonner making her way up to the stage now. Second place today. Another very good ski from her, just in the end, outpaced in the final 100 meters or so, really here in the arena by Norgren on this occasion.
And of course, the winner of the race is Britta Johansson Norgren from Sweden, Lager 157 ski team.
So Norgren, of course, holding on to the yellow bib, and she does win.
President of the organizing committee is handing over the
race
flowers
as well.
Masako Ishida, if you're here, you still have a chance.
Struggling to locate Masako, aren't they? Because she should be taking 3rd spot on the podium. We need to move on with things. Hopefully Masako Ishida can make her way and join the rest of the women's podium.
Yeah, it's sometimes tough because you have to change your clothes and everything, you know, make sure that you not get, you know, cold and all that. So
competition, the national anthem of Sweden.
Sure to be an emotional occasion for Britta Johansson Norgren, a proud Swede. Here is the anthem.
Well, she found her way on the podium.
Yeah, Masako Ishida has joined and gets her prize, his third spot, the place finish. But of course, we had the Swedish national anthem recognising another victory in the Visma Ski Classics for 2015-2016 for Britta Johansson Norgren, her fourth stage win of the season, and she firmly holds on, extends her lead in the overall yellow champion bib. Good crowds actually gathered here for the presentation, which is just happening to the right of our commentary position when we look at it. As, the men are waiting to be introduced on the podium finishers, but yeah, good crowds gathered beneath us here.
Yeah, a lot of these people just come to cheer their family and friends and stuff like that. That's the great thing about these, that you have people skiing there, people that you know.
Leader bib for the best young athlete,
and people from different countries.
Still Stian Holgaard of Norway and Team Lisplan Go. It is Stian Holgaard.
So the bibs are being presented now, as is always the case. Stian Holgaard holds on to the pink bib, but his lead's been cut, actually. It was 104 points at the beginning of the day, but Anders Hoss, tremendous ski from his teammate, fourth overall in the race. And Holgaard down the positionings. So, yeah, his lead has been cut overall.
Stian Holgaard, best young athlete. We will continue with a green.
It was a really good race. I mean, it's really good to see these two guys
doing so well. Holgaard actually down in 28th overall, so he's lost a lot of points there to Host. We'll get the updated standings for you. This man continues. He didn't actually finish up in the points in either sprint competition. I'm interested to hear how the race went for him overall. It seemed very, very disappointing, but Nergård, the work you've got to feel has been done through the first set of races, really, through the first 6 stages, because his lead is still huge over Marcus Ottosson, who did trim it by 40 points winning the first of the sprint stages. Nergård didn't score in either sprint stage, but still, the lead overall is 240 points heading to the Vasaloppet.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see how, some days you perform well and some days you don't. Like for him, it was a bad day. Same with the Holgaard, who was, on the podium in Marcialonga, now far behind. But that's what makes this interesting. All of these, eventually Eliasson will face a day that not everything is going according to a plan.
Eliasson's lead has been trimmed as well. Now 110 points. He does hold on to the yellow bib. Of course, he's the defending champion, having won this for the first time, the yellow champion bib last season. But his lead's been trimmed thanks to Jødalen's victory, down to 110 points now.
Yellow bib, Petter Eliasson, best young athlete Stian Holgaard, and the best sprinter Andreas Nygård. Big round of applause for the three.
No changes in the men's bibs, main bibs overall.
Thank you very much. We will continue
all of them
with the
having their leads trimmed after this race. Which provides a bit more interest heading to March in the remaining Visma Ski Classic stages.
So we have three left in the big Scandinavian races.
In third place from
Norway,
Team United Bakeries, Jon Christian Dahl.
And now the presentation for the Dobbiaco Cortina race itself, the podium. Jon Christian Dahl, first time back on the podium in Visma Ski Classics since the opening weekend of the season when he won La Scambeda. Back on the podium now, thanks to a very good ski overall, finishing up third. Some 27 seconds behind the top two.
From Norway as well, and Team Lisplan Go, Petter Eliasson.
Just edged out on this occasion. Petter Eliasson mentioned having his lead trimmed from 140 to 110 points. Of course, edged out in the Marcialonga, but edged out really here in the final straight in front of us on this occasion here in the Nordic Arena.
A round of applause for the winner of Dobbiaco Cortina 2016, also from Norway, Team Santander, Tord Asle Jødalen.
Second stage win of the season for Tord Jødalen of Team Santander, getting the better of Petter Eliasson in the final straight here in the arena. And he's pleased about it, isn't he, as well? He's just kept it interesting, the yellow bib, heading into March. And more importantly, actually, a stage win as well, another one.
Yes, we have 3 different teams represented here, but they're all from Norway.
Hear this anthem a lot in winter sport. Hear it again here.
Applaus, ein Riesenapplaus für die Beste heute in Dobbiaco. Big round of applause. And that concludes the flower ceremony, but we remind you of the official prize-giving ceremony in the Grand Hotel.
So there we go then, as our announcer was saying, the official ceremony concluded. Pictures now, which will be available on the Visma Ski Classics site, media across the world, because of course these results, particularly in native countries as well, you think about it in Norway, massive interest in the fact they've got a 1, 2, 3 here, all different teams represented, of course. Santander, United Bakeries and Leaseplan go on the podium there in the men's race, but Norway dominating once again in the men's standings there in the podium. 3 Norwegian skiers. Actually, you look at the top 7, they have 5 of the top 7, all the top 4. So the updated standings then in the competition, I mentioned Britta Johansson Nordgren extending her lead. It's now up to 190 points over Katarina Smutner in the battle for the champion bib. And Sarina Bonner in 3rd spot, also making up some ground on Smutner, so she can now eye up 2nd place there, just 50 points behind the Austrian at this stage, but they're well clear. Sarah Limborg creditably 695 points in 4th spot there, and Misako Ishida boosting her title, of course, with the podium finish here. The youth bid for the women, Emilia Lindstedt didn't actually compete. She was unwell. Didn't hear from her at the press conference yesterday, but and she wasn't in the race today. But her lead, massive. Frankly, she will win that competition with the lead that she's got. 300 and, 68 points overall, if my arithmetic is correct. Some photos now. You can see here the respective winners alongside David Nielsen, just to the left of Britta Nordgren, Britta Johansson Nordgren, the CEO of Visma Ski Classics, and some of the other VIPs, dignitaries. But there are your 2 winners of first time this has been part of the Visma Ski Classics, of course the 39th edition of the Dobbiaco Cortina. Tordi Darlen and Britta Johansson Nordgren. We take a look at the updated champion bib standings for the men. Petter Eliasson, he's had his lead cut because of Jadalen pipping him there. Where he sits now is 110 points with Johan Scholstad in 3rd. That's fairly tight as well, because it's just 79 points between him, but he has extended that in the battle for 3rd over Morten Eder Pedersen after today's results. But it's going to be interesting going to March now, with it now down to 110 points, whether Jadalen can keep this going and keep trimming Eliasson's advantage further.
Indeed it will, and then, they have 3 weeks to prepare for the next one, which is a good break for all of them, of course,
Sprint competition, Andreas Niergaard, who didn't score in either of the sprint standings, but his lead is 240 points, still very, very good, because Marcus Ottosson, he took 1 victory. It would have been interesting if he'd managed to take the 2nd as well, because it would have brought it down further, clearly, but it's still 240 points and still a very healthy advantage for the man from Team Santander in that competition. And the youth bib, this is perhaps the most interesting competition of all here, because look at the ground made up by Anders Host. Yeah, just 7 points between them now. And so that means he's made up overall 97 points thanks to this, because Hullegard was way down in the top 30 and the low 20s in the positionings. But Host, brilliant 4th place, and that is going to go right to the wire, that one, we think. That pink youth bib in the men's competition, great to see.
Yeah, it seems that they will be fighting all the way towards the end of the season.
And here are the pro team competition standings. The blue pro team bib, Team Santander. Well, it's quite some advantage they have. What's the numbers here now? 571 and 573. They've actually extended the lead overall. It's now over 600 points for Magna Dahlon's team over Team United Bakeries. We look at the battle for 3rd as well. Team Expert have just... what have they done? 100 and with our live standings, 131. So they've actually just edged it up a couple of points over the Lager 1517, but a good battle going on there, heading to the Scandinavian races for 3rd spot there between Expert and Lager 157 as well in the team competition.
And the Leaseplan's problem is that they only pretty much have Eliasson, getting all the points.
So some of the highlights of the day we look back at. Again, as always, Teemu, just a brief wrap-up, really, your kind of thoughts on this race. First time we've had this race in the Visma Ski Classics. Wrap-up thoughts on how it went.
I think it went perfectly. It was a really nice race. It's shorter one, but it seemed to be perfect for this for this time of the year. They're getting ready for Vasaloppet, and the last weekend was a really tough one. Conditions were good. We got a nice snow, a little bit new snow there, and it's a great, perfect place for a race. So I think everything went pretty according to plan, and I think everyone was pretty happy. And talking about the athletes, but also I think the skiers out there, skiing right now are really happy. The sun is shining, so it's a perfect addition to this Visma Ski Classics family, and I really hope to see this one grow and have more people next year, and of course the whole course, and to finish in the beautiful place of the Cortina, of course. But hopefully that'll be next year.
Yeah, we hope that. But it's been by all accounts, a pretty successful first time that this race has been part of the Visma Ski Classics, the Grand Fondo, as they call it here. So look back there at the end to the thrilling women's race there, the conclusion, Britta Janssen Norgren, 4th stage win of the season, holding on to the yellow bib, and equally thrilling the conclusion to the men's race. Tord Darling getting the better of Petter Eliasson for the race victory here, and trimming Eliasson's lead in the overall yellow men's champion bib. So certainly some great stories from the weekend here in northern Italy. Of course, we've been here a few times in northern Italy this season, but we're going to turn our attentions now, after a break of a few weeks, to the remaining Scandinavian races. Next up, the Vasaloppet, of course, the first Sunday in March in Dalarna region in the middle of Sweden. And we'll be there, of course, for the 8th event of this year's Visma Ski Classics for 2015-2016. Just 3 races remaining. That one to follow, of course, the Birken in Norway, and then the Orefjellsloppet to finish up again in the slightly north of the Vasaloppet, but again in the middle of Sweden, really, to finish off the Visma Ski Classics final at the beginning of April. We hope you've enjoyed the coverage, as always, and you can join us again in a few weeks' time for the world-famous Vasaloppet, the 90-kilometre classic technique. Remains us to thank our whole team, and from Teemu Virtanen and myself, Guy McCree, thanks for your company as always. We'll see you next time. Thank
you very much, and I'll be at the Vasaloppet skiing that time around, but see you at the Birki as a commentator. Thank you.
Adrian Aubry, Österschweiz, Sanders Konzept. Theo Sundberg, Storvreta, Sverige.